Morning.
Hello, hello.
Terence, did you pull us off mute? Morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Macro. I don't know Terrence is there or not, but I believe he is the one that broke the silence this morning. Terrence, are you there, sir?
I thought you wanted some intro music.
Oh, you got intro music? Well, let's hear a little blurb.
Oh, did you not hear it? It was playing the whole time.
No, I didn't. I did not hear it.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
so bizarre. No
Did you
worries. Well, now we're in it. Now we're talking.
did you hear it, Macro?
Nope.
Darn it. Now I
You
want
know
a
what?
little
Maybe if people are talking, we don't hear it. Maybe that's the issue.
Yeah,
But that's
or if
okay.
the host has the whole space muted, maybe. What can you give us a little few second teaser?
Um, let's see. All right. Well, wait. Oh yeah, I guess people are still rolling in. Okay. So put your thumb down if you don't hear it. Okay. Wow. I don't know what's going on then. That's bizarre.
You broke spaces.
I did. I broke it.
Broke,
Yeah. All right.
broke
We'll do
spaces.
without it and figure it out next time. Hopefully, though, that you can hear clips if I play clips. Actually, let me drop down and I'll come back up.
Sounds good.
All right.
I used to listen to their Cafe Bitcoin space that Terrence did. I enjoyed the intro music. Uh, it always got me fired up. So I definitely appreciated that. Puncher, what's up, sir?
Hey guys, how you doing? I had a buddy who may join us. He's a Goldman guy that I went to rival high schools with. His name's Art. Super smart guy, done really well on Wall Street. Is convinced that Michael Saylor is a shyster and going to go the way of Bernie Madoff. So I did invite him to come on and listen in and ask questions and fire away any concerns about Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. Thought that might be interesting, but not sure if he's going to join us or not.
That would be spicy.
Art's a great. He's the thing I like about Artie is he's not closed minded and he's very smart and inquisitive. So perfect candidate for us to gang up on
Yeah,
and wrestle him into the orange world.
Kevin, I think it's I'm struggling with like negative feedback and just being called names, and we watched the exchange between two people we most of us in here really enjoy, Joe and our other buddy. It's tough for me to witness it because I like them both and I hate to see it escalate to the point where we're name calling. So for me it's I don't enjoy it at all. Um, but it's tough, especially if you're the one being called names. It's not fun. So not a good place in my estimation. I hope we can you know, mature and not, go to eighth grade levels and name call. But yeah, kind of crappy.
Also, it's going to be played out in the courts today in the Maxi Madness tournament. So probably should just share that up there, and the
Oh,
people
yeah,
can speak for
right.
themselves by voting. You know, let me.
That's hilarious. I noticed you're in that.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
I'm against yellow in the first round.
Didn't Yellow win the whole
So
thing last year?
yeah, I don't. If you guys just go to my profile, see my pinned tweet, I'll share that in the nest, I guess, to start out. I did this today because, yeah, well, anybody that's going against yellow, especially a humble pleb like myself, is going to get destroyed, which is why I voted for yellow against myself. So, anyways, let me go find the Lepard v. Joe, and I'll throw that up there, and the people can vote for themselves. In 1 second here. Where is it at?
Other stuff going down. I think is Trump speaking like right now as we speak,
Yeah.
literally.
I think he came in on a virtual video and he
Oh,
spoke for
okay.
about 2 minutes, and I don't think he's doing any more speaking than that.
Did you catch any of those of his words, or did you pick up any?
I caught most of it. We know,
It's
like
right there.
the most of it, he was just sort of recapping the SBR and okay, I don't know who's making that noise. Is that the chicken? Gonna let the chicken go.
Too late. I already let the chicken go. I don't know who brought the chicken up in the first
I
place.
brought the chicken up because
Okay, and he was.
I took a chance, dropped the chicken down. That's the risk you take.
Okay, I found it. Lepard v. Joe is now in the nest for everybody. It might take it a second to load for y'all, so if it does, just give it a second and then it should be up there. You can just click on that in the nest and go cast your vote. Looks like right now Lepard is ahead with 66% to Joe's 34% with about 370 votes cast. So
Nice. Good morning, Asteroid and Jeff. Peace.
Hey, you didn't see the Trump recording? Dude, he
I
didn't
do
say
have the
anything.
best 2 minutes of it. If you want, I can play it at any
He
point.
literally
but-
didn't say anything, Terrence. There was no point watching it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Didn't
For a lot of us that are paying attention to what's happening every single day and every minute, there isn't a lot that's new. But yeah, if people want to hear it,
Terrence, didn't he address choke point 2.0?
yes,
Yeah, he
Okay, I
did.
think that was pretty. That was. I mean, that's something right there.
yeah, but like Asteroid said, yeah, it's just the same. He's just reinforcing the SBR and that we shouldn't have sold and that we're never going to sell and
Yeah,
should have
no
done
new
what
news, no
Biden
new
did.
details. That's
Yeah,
all.
there
But
there
it
are
was,
no new details. Correct.
But I mean, it's coming right straight from his mouth, so that is, something a little more than David Sachs or underlings, I guess. So, I mean, to me, it's good. I mean, good news. Good
I mean, if
news.
you want
the
me to
problem
play
is,
it, I'll play it. But it sounds like you weren't hearing
Well,
my
you're
audio.
teasing. We're teasing it a lot, so I don't know
the
if you
problem is
want
that people oversell this stuff. They're like, "Oh, DoD is going to make a huge announcement." It's like Twitter just
That's why.
overhypes
That's
things.
why. That's why Dennis Porter's getting beat right now because he's,
Well,
boy, right off a little.
the
what are
huge
the
announcement
announcements?
needs to
Dennis
be
Porter.
the
Okay.
huge announcement needs to be that we are proving that we have Bitcoin in the first place, which to me is just ludicrous that they have to spend 3 weeks to audit and find out if they even have the Bitcoin they're saying they have, which is concerning to me. I mean, you either have it or you don't. There is no
Yeah.
questioning. That's what's great about Bitcoin. It's there or it's
What are the
not.
addresses? It takes about 5 minutes to
It
check.
takes 5 minutes, right?
Which one was missing? Which agencies? U.S. Marshal.
U.S. Marshals, yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and so even if they
DOJ.
custodied some of that with Coinbase, you have an account. That's
They're
uh,
saying Anchorage is the custodian, so that's why I did the posting about the Anchorage thing last week, some point. But
wait,
yeah,
what do
I
you?
agree. It's not Fort Knox. So what were you saying, Terrence?
I just didn't know if you were confusing Anchorage with Anchor Watch, but I was the one confusing the two.
Yeah, no, it was. I don't know. I didn't go deep, but I just was curious, like you guys are, like, hey, how hard can this be to actually audit this stuff? And
Gonna be easy. We're gonna send TC
yeah,
over
It's
there,
not 5
and
minutes, you guys.
he'll tell us
Because as
immediately.
everyone knows, you can
10
just tell
minutes.
everyone you were just kidding. It's not 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It takes a second to verify what's on an address,
yeah,
but that's not the thing that needs to be verified when you're talking about a large group of humans, especially government organizations. Come on, think. It's who has keys. That's who owns the Bitcoin. So it's not just about what balance is on what address. You have to actually track down who has control of any of this shit. And I highly doubt any of this shit is on chain in the first place. A lot of it's probably just custodied somewhere. I don't know. The whole thing is a real mess because you're talking about a ton of people that are not really oriented, by default to this protocol and this technology. So, my imagination runs wild about like what the potential setups are and what they would actually have to do to verify, what's being held, but more importantly, who and how many people have access to it.
Yeah, they 100% don't have their own keys. It's definitely custodied, which is why my argument is that they just need to get the addresses. They had to have the addresses when they first confiscated the Bitcoin in the first place from Bitfinex and wherever else they
Right,
took
but
it
you would have
from.
assumed like if they had their shit together, they would have probably transferred those funds to new addresses that they were certain of their sole ownership of the keys. That's the ownership
Yes, that's what I
paradigm.
mean though. Like transferring it to Coinbase or to Anchorage or wherever. Like that address had to have been written down somewhere. So like what, someone's hiding it in a desk drawer, like on a sticky note? I don't know. That's the part that's retarded
I
to
think
me.
it's a sock drawer, actually, not a desk at all, more a dresser. What was the didn't we get something triggering saying, hey, the US government is moving coins toward the end of last year, and it kind of sent some mass hysteria shockwaves through the Bitcoin community. I forgot what came of that. I don't think anything, but an address or a couple of addresses related to or thought to be U.S. government were sending coins to
Oh, that
Coinbase
was
or
fake
something.
news. Completely fake news.
Well, it's hard to verify that, right? Like with what TC is saying, it's like when you can't
Well,
know
there's
who
that
owns
website that tracks it. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. And
Macro,
I don't
weigh in
think
on
they.
this one. You got your thumb down.
Do people just every time the credit crashes, they're like the government's selling?
It's
It's like
if I
the
did, I
S
didn't
and P
mean
is
to.
down 10%. Come on, like I don't understand this.
I don't know where you got that. I don't think anybody said the government was selling, but it was said that they transferred coins from one address to Coinbase or another custodian.
Yeah, I
I don't
remember
think anybody.
seeing those headlines go around, but I don't think ever anything ever really came of that, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it was like ARC or one of those sites that you described that tracks,
What is
substantial
it,
wallets.
Arkham?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, and kind of to TC's point, like it's hard to really know even who's controlling what. And I mean, until they really come out and say, which I doubt would happen, hey, here's the addresses we control, and like, there's some sort of easily auditable process, you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt. And even then, you still kind of have to take it with a grain of salt because depending on what their custody model looks like, I doubt they would use single sigs for 200,000 coins, but you never know. Governments are dumb. So it's kind of hard to say. I think a lot of it's just hearsay until you actually have some sort of official.
Too much hearsay.
Yeah.
Too much hearsay. Like it's just like, come on already.
Well, and even then, like, how do you really trust it? I don't know. It's a lot of it's just noise, I think. Like, what matters is the signaling that it's now seen as strategically important to them, and everything else is kind of noise, in my opinion.
Puncher, let us know if your guest does hop in here, and we'll make sure we get him up here.
Who's the guest today?
Well, it was not confirmed. It's you jammed in a little late, so Puncher did a little brief introduction.
Who is it? Somebody like we don't know that
You have
is
to go
subscribers
back and
here?
listen to the recording of this space, Asteroid.
You can't until it's posted.
Well, then you might have to wait a while.
We'll end the space and then post it and then restart so that Asteroid can re-listen.
Yes, that is definitely the simplest thing to do.
Jeff,
Um,
Jeffy,
Hey, Loren,
let's
sorry,
do.
buddy.
Yeah,
He
Go ahead.
already said he might jump in a little bit.
Oh,
So
nice. Okay, cool.
if I
Do you
see
want
him,
to do?
I'll
Do
yell
you want
real
to do
quick.
the intro again, just because there's folks
Oh,
like
already.
Asteroid
I
too?
see. Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, he knows.
The
Do you
intro?
want to do the intro again, just because there's a lot of people that have jumped in since you
Yeah.
gave his introduction?
I got a buddy who went to a rival high school of mine, played football against him. He, by the way, he was like for the longest time the all-time leading rusher in football in the Catholic League in Philadelphia, which is pretty impressive league. He went to Villanova with me, and just a great guy. Went and worked for Goldman, I believe, and worked on Wall Street forever. And he's just got a lot of questions about MicroStrategy. He's convinced that it's a total Ponzi scheme, and that Bitcoin. I don't know that he's. I don't
Okay.
know that he's really understands Bitcoin. And so anyway, he might have some questions. that a traditional finance guy would have, and maybe we could answer some of those questions. So I
If
invited
he
him.
comes in, we'll try to get somebody like Punter Jeff or somebody in here who spends a ton of their time studying MicroStrategy just to be able to be maybe an expert and provide a little bit better clarification and knowledge than probably the average one of us up on the stage right now. No offense, fellas.
Yeah, and again, it's gonna be. Let's keep it, civil and
Why do
not
you say
nothing.
that, Puncher? Is he kind of upset about it? Why
No,
do
no,
people get
he's
so
just
mad
he's
about it?
just convinced that he's convinced that it's a scam. He just doesn't he doesn't understand Bitcoin. I don't think. Although I sent him the Bitcoin Standard. I sent him a couple books. I bought them for him. I'm sure he's taking a look. I just want to get someone's perspective who is
Well,
from
I think
TradFi.
for one thing, if you think Bitcoin's a scam, then you really can't make the leap to MicroStrategy. So,
No, I get that, but
like, if you,
it's a
I feel
free
like we
for
can
all.
only really argue in favor of MicroStrategy if he gets Bitcoin. Otherwise, it's like you got to start with Bitcoin. So,
Well, let's
Hey,
put it this way:
Puncher.
he ran quant tech. He's a quick study. If you can connect the dots for him, go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
I was just going to interject real quick. If you recommend the Bitcoin Standard for people, I've got another suggestion for a book to recommend to people, which is 21 Lessons, mainly because you can literally read it in an afternoon. And if you give most people the Bitcoin Standard, it's a lot denser. It's a slower read. It takes much more commitment for people to actually, persevere through it. Whereas you could probably get all the key concepts from 21 Lessons, and I highly recommend that book as just another alternative for different people. Maybe this particular friend, the Bitcoin Standard is the right choice, but there's other people I've found that I get no luck with them reading that, and then I recommend them 21 Lessons, and they're literally coming back the next day because they consume it so quickly, and they're they got the key ideas already in their brain. I find it much more
That,
effective.
that's great, Terrence. Thank you.
can I recommend a
Hey,
book, Puncher? The big
no, we don't want
Bitcoin
to
book
read the
Yeah,
by
crap you read, Asteroid.
the big Bitcoin book by Fred Krueger and Ben Sigmund. How
Oh,
about
good
that one?
Lord.
I've got
Asteroid,
three
you're
copies.
going, Asteroid, you're going to hell. I'm sorry
Can
to
we
say
can
it,
we give
but
him a
Are you
10-minute
bullish on
macro.
timeout?
Soul?
Let's just remove him from stage for 10 minutes, and you can come back when
Hey.
you've thought about what you've done, Asteroid.
Hey, regardless of what you
That's
think about
funny.
Soul and all that stuff, that it is a pretty cool book. It's pretty cool.
Actually, Puncher convinced me not to sell mine, so thanks to you, Puncher, I still own it. Hey, macro, maybe now is a good segue into the topic we were discussing offline, which is Tether being the, what was it, number seven largest
Yeah, I
purchaser.
had actually already shared that in the nest.
Oh, not, oh, I didn't see that. Oh, that's funny. But I
Yeah,
thought, because we're all suspicious, well, not we. There's been a lot of suspicion about, MicroStrategy potentially being the stash that the US government obfuscates at some point in the future and blah, 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 blah. When actually, in real time, Tether is pretty much doing this right in front of our eyeballs. So, Macro, I'll let you take it from here.
yeah, no, I just this tweet has gotten, quite a bit of publicity this morning, which was the CEO of Tether posted um, that they were the seventh largest buyer of U.S. Treasuries. In this is getting compared to other countries, right? So in 2024, number one was Cayman Islands, number two was France, three Luxembourg, four Belgium, five Singapore, six UK, and seven was Tether, and then everybody else bought less than them. So I was just sharing in the group chat that we have earlier that I think that trend's going to continue, and eventually it wouldn't surprise me at all if they end up being the number one buyer of U.S. Treasuries, which I think is why they kind of got brought into the fold even before Trump was elected, right? The previous administration pretty much had the intelligence agencies go in and do their thing, and I think they were kind of, I don't know, anointed by the by the state to say, all right, well, you're funding quite a bit of our operation, so keep doing what you're doing, but just play ball with us when we need you to. And it feels like that's kind of just the way that it's been going, and it's likely to continue. And I would just say the one silver lining to this is that they do buy Bitcoin with the money they make from treasuries. And just to give you an idea of order of magnitude, right? Tether doing nothing but buying and holding treasuries made more profits than BlackRock. So, like, it's just a massive slush fund of dollars that they have, and they are putting a good bit of that into Bitcoin. So they are a constant buy side pressure for Bitcoin, which, if you're a holder, is a good thing. I think the question becomes, all right, how much would they play ball with the US? Would they try to do censoring of transactions, debanking of people, the kind of stuff that we've seen in the traditional banking system? I mean, we've seen them play ball in small ways in the past, but I'm not really sure of the exact details of that. I definitely don't claim to be an expert. I just know, for me, it kind of pings a yellow flag of, hey, you basically have a centralized entity that is kind of behind the scenes just coming in to be effectively what a CBDC would be, right? It just doesn't have the central bank running it. It has a it has a private entity running it. But as far as what they're able to do, it's really indistinguishable in my opinion. So I'll pause there and see if anybody else has thoughts.
Anybody but Asteroid. Oh,
Uh,
right when he comes off of mute. You're
Yeah.
forbidden. I wanted
isn't
to say good morning to Simon, who just hopped up on stage as well. Good morning, Simon. I mean, I always say good morning, but I forget you're in a different time zone. So good
Yeah,
day, sir. Sorry.
afternoon, morning,
Yeah,
evening,
whatever it
wherever you
is,
may
huh?
be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
yeah.
great to hear your voice.
Cool,
isn't
cool.
isn't Tether like base like
Go ahead,
pseudo or
Asteroid. Chime on in
isn't
here.
it permissionless in a weird like? I mean, I've
Macro,
used it.
what are you
I've used it.
speaking right
I'm
now?
trying to think about. Do you have to
No,
disclose your identity?
redemption with Tether is always permissioned.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's the
but
same.
you can
You
use
still
it
have
without
to. They're
redemption, right?
registered.
Like,
They're registered with FinCEN, so they have to do everything that a money transmitter has to do. And then you
okay,
have to follow bank secrecy. So they have to have the ability to stop it because otherwise they'd be in
we,
breach. But yeah, they've
well, what
got
about?
all sharing agreements, and there is surveillance as you will have to be as soon as you're registered with FinCEN.
Couldn't you use a non KYC exchange though, and you get access to it, and then just transfer it wherever you want?
Feel
Yeah,
free to
that's
talk over Asteroid too. He still has 7 more minutes in his timeout, so feel free to just talk right over him.
I, I'm not
this
defending it.
comes
I've
down
just used it and
to
trying to understand. That's all.
Hey, Asteroid, Simon was trying to speak. Sorry, Simon, that he rudely interrupted you there. Go ahead.
no worries. Can you hear me, Asteroid? Anyway,
He should be
Yeah,
in
sorry. I think
timeout. I
there's
don't know
just a
what he's.
delay.
Yeah,
oh, we've got a bit of a lag. Yeah.
it's in
Um,
Asteroid's mind.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the stablecoin regulations have to define. So if we got in Europe, they got one called Mika, and Mika. The reason Tether pulled out is because you have to comply with travel rule, and travel rule means when you send, you have to have the details of the sending party, and you have to send them to the recipient. And so, if America ends up doing something like this, it just kills stablecoins because they only work under the existing model where you can just send it, you create an immutable record, but you're innocent until proven guilty, rather than banking, which is guilty until proven innocent. Because then every transaction, when you're doing an international one, you have to prove that you're not a criminal. But yeah, at the moment, if the regulations keep innocent until proven guilty, then it will grow and solve many of the problems. But if you do what Europe is doing, where you integrate the travel, and this is where it's like it's going to require an incredible amount of lobby and pressure to get that, because the justification of why it would give a strategic advantage to the stablecoin issuer over the banking system, that's going to be one heck of a battle. And so to keep stablecoins as they are today, it's going to be a really important one, because I mean, I would use a stable coin to transact over Swift any day of the week. It's just a significant improvement.
Yeah, and I think for me the one thing is, to your point, Simon, like there's the potential here for it to be a lot less invasive. But on the flip side of that, if the wrong person is running it and making the laws around how people can utilize it, it could just as easily become something far more invasive, right? Where you can basically, you don't even need to go through like intermediaries of any kind. You just have a court order, and then there's one central entity that's controlling wallets, and just boom, you're debanked, and there's no alternative, right?
Yeah, it appears that they're going to go for a free banking model where stablecoin issuers can just compete, but obviously there'll be competition of chains, and I reckon, and competition for who can get the most treasuries to back it. It will that having such a competitive market means that rather than Tether just giving you tethers and then they keep all the yield to buy Bitcoin, I think that will compete away where they'll have to share the yield on chain. And then you could do exactly the Tether strategy of owning a stable coin. And then you could have an algorithm that would auto convert your yield paid on chain and then auto convert it to Bitcoin. And then you can just own you can earn fiat currency that kicks off a free Bitcoin position like Tether. I can't imagine that exponential profit can be maintained in a competitive environment. So I think it would have to be shared with the consumer. So if we get ultra competition and they keep the same model, this could kick off a wave of. I mean, imagine dollars that give you free Bitcoin, all on chain, like that you just convert. And then if they put the stable coin on Lightning and various other things, this could be transformative if it's allowed to exist this way, which is why I think the Fed, the OCC, FDIC, they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that stablecoins don't have a competitive advantage over their shareholders and the banks. It's going to be a really interesting one to watch it closely. But it is a two-tiered system. You got Europe that's going down the CBDC route, and then America's going down the technocracy route, where essentially the dollar becomes the technology companies, the Circles, the Coinbases, even World Liberty Financial is going to be doing the same stablecoins. So Trump will do it itself. So it is two parts of a similar model, but one gives full control to the central bank. The other gives full control to the issuers of the stablecoins.
It's interesting as you say that. I just saw this come across my feed, which was somebody was quoting the European Central Bank, but if you click on it, the original post from the ECB is there, and they say, quote, "The digital euro is not just about creating a new form of money," says Chief Economist Philip R. Lane. "It's about ensuring that Europe retains control over its monetary and financial destiny in the digital age against a backdrop of increasing geopolitical fragmentation," end quote. So yeah, you know,
AKA, we want to be able to print ourselves a war whenever we need one.
yeah. And so then the person who edited it said, "The digital euro is not money, it's about control." And they blacked out all the rest of the words, which I thought was pretty clever. So I figured I'd share that. Um, but yeah,
It's
so
rough.
Don't the words of, was it Christine Lagarde who was saying how they were going to try to mobilize the unused savings of their population just last week? And isn't this also just a whole nother like potential source? Like they don't even have to print the money for the war they want to fight. They can just take it from their citizens.
It's much
Well, it's
needed
ruining
investment.
it's
Doesn't it
ruining the
also?
economy, TC. That's unused savings. No one's spending it. It's just sitting there.
Yeah.
It's so unproductive. So
so
let's
bad.
put it to use.
Oh man, it's so bad,
I've
dude.
actually, if you look at your bank's terms and conditions, I'm a geek. I actually look at these things. there's many banks in their terms. They say like there's a certain period of time at which I think it's like 7 years. If they try to contact you, they assume you passed away, and then they get to keep your deposits. But there is billions like this. I mean, I remember once it was going to be used as a bailout tool. I can't remember which crisis it was, but they were. I
I
think it
think that
was
was
the
'08, wasn't
Silicon
it?
Valley Bank one.
Or was it that recent, really?
I think so. I remember, yeah, they were looking at using that as a source, and then obviously the Fed just created another tool.
There's always another tool.
Yeah, this is a tool. CBDC is the ultimate tool, the end game tool.
Yeah,
we do
for sure.
have,
Hey, I
so
just wanted to give, yeah, I was probably going to say the same thing as macro, which is just good morning to Robert. And then maybe little housekeeping, which is just throw your hand up because we are getting a little bit of a full stage. So I know a lot of you guys want to interject. We'll definitely work you into the conversation. Just throw your hand up and we'll do it. Maybe Robert, before you get into any macro or any other economic stuff, any thoughts on what we were just talking about with this whole, Tether being what the seventh largest purchaser of the treasuries? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, guys. It's I think it's an indication of kind of the shift from uh, shift in treasury demand and how, I mean, really since 2014, foreign central banks holdings of treasuries on a net basis have been declining. So the buyers that kind of historically propped up the global reserve currency and bought our debt, kept our rates low, all that kind of stuff. Like those price insensitive kind of sovereigns are not buying the debt anymore. Now you have hedge funds in like tax havens, like Ireland and the Cayman Islands, who are not buying it. Like a hedge fund in Ireland is buying treasuries for a totally different reason than a sovereign bank accumulating FX reserves.
Hey, Robert,
So
like traditionally, like back then, who would it have been? Like the Chinese government, Japan, Saudi, like who, like what is
yeah,
the flip flop? Okay.
yeah,
China, Japan, Saudi
yeah,
Arabia. Sorry.
any country that ran a trade surplus with us. So Japan historically held a lot. China, Europe had quite a few. But yeah, and so now over the past 10 years you've kind of transitioned away from that towards hedge funds, right, which are basically buying it for capital appreciation as a trade. They are not, they're weaker hands compared to a sovereign and Tether. And I think it illustrates the kind of lack of demand that used to kind of hold up the entire system, which was we ship you dollars, you reinvest them, and you buy our debt, and keep our rates low. And it's been shifting. Like people talk about, I know Joe is like very pro dollar and kind of anti any kind of talk of it going away, but like the reality is just like on a net basis it's already been happening for 10 years. And Tether is just kind of like another layer up, right? It's just another step up in away from kind of the sovereigns that used to be buying it. And yeah, I would just say for the Fed yesterday, like they're slowing QT. It's not like ended today. It's not finito, but it is slowing. Number one, and then number two, they they revised up their inflation target, not target, expectation. So they revised up their inflation expectation and revised down their growth and GDP expectation. So basically stagflation. Um,
Where are they getting that
I,
inflation from, though? Because everything you look at, inflation is going
it
down,
doesn't
right?
say. Yeah, they don't break it down. They
Like
just
commodity indices. The only thing I see is that housing is still a tad bit hot. If you look at Redfin and other sources, other third-party
yeah, well,
sources.
services. I mean, the main with inflation, like the main issue is services.
Where,
Services make up
where do you
about
see that data?
70% of kind of overall. consumer activity is services based. And so services is much more sticky. Like goods have actually shown a little bit of disinflation and even deflation for some particular groups of goods, but services remains like very sticky. Like services, if I remember correctly, is like 3.4.
Like which ones? What
So
would that consist
it
of?
just
Robert, I just want to apologize for Asteroid coming hard out of the penalty box. He served his 10-minute
We're just
penalty
talking.
and it's just
yeah,
charging.
just like how housing services, hair barbers, and anything that's not a tangible good, which when you start to think about it, is really a lot of our economy. This was part of the kind of agreement of the restructuring of our economy away from kind of producing real tangible kind of physical goods, and towards this more kind of services based, lawyers and doctors, all that kind of stuff is services, and that inflation is stuck. Like it hasn't. Like if you look at it on a graph, it went up to, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, and it's been coming down, but then it just kind of got stuck at like 3.5. So that's really, I think, where the issue is. I don't really think it's goods as much, but with tariffs, we could see goods inflation kind of, a one-time kind of price increase. And so, yeah, I would say the main takeaway for me was that QT is slowing, which is good, pro liquidity. So for Bitcoin, that's good. They're clearly worried about liquidity. And so not very many people talking about this. I put a post this morning and I'll put it in the nest, but the funding markets, the money, the market for money, was starting to kind of show some stress in late December of 24. And, I couldn't really tell if it was just kind of like normal end of the year kind of stuff. And it did eventually get better, like after 3-4 days. But then it started to kind of show some stress again, within the past couple of weeks. And, I said, I put the post to keep an eye on it. Well, sure enough, it must have worried them enough. Number one, Jerome Powell mentioned it during the presser, and number two, the TGA got ran down. So the Treasury General account is basically like a checking account for the federal government, and it's just all this money that they've accumulated that at any given time they can spend it out into the real economy, and it's an injection of liquidity basically. And the TGA came down like $300 billion over the past 2 weeks. And so credit spreads had started to kind of blow out. Credit spreads started to come back. The funding markets started to come back. And you could tell that they were worried about kind of liquidity. So I would just say, like, as a pro, that's good for Bitcoin, because if they're kind of going to be more supportive of liquidity, that's obviously very good for Bitcoin. But the warning, I would say, and this goes back to what I've been saying for a few months now, like there's still, in my opinion, a pretty good possibility that we see some kind of credit event, or repo rate spike, or 2008 when credit spreads blew out, and that kind of thing. So in that kind of event, Bitcoin would sell off like really sharply over like a day or two, and then they would come in with the kind of liquidity bazooka, and inject liquidity. But in a stagflationary environment, which is what the forecast kind of was, lower growth, higher inflation, I would imagine that's good for Bitcoin. And I would also imagine that the ending of QT, clearly they ran the TGA down because they were, credit markets were starting to get a little spicy. So clearly, like, they're kind of erring more on the side of like pro liquidity, which is obviously very good for Bitcoin. But yeah, outside of that, it was really not super eventful. But if we, again, stagflation is kind of not just like a recession. It's the kind of thing where we haven't really seen how Bitcoin performs in it. We don't really have like a large amount of history to see how it would perform. I would imagine it would do well, more from the kind of inflationary side. But yeah, that's a takeaway for me, at least, for the FOMC.
Hey
Infra.
Robert, the the call we did this morning in the Finance Daily. Do you get the feeling that nobody has a solution? Like nobody knows what to do, and every direction. Like a lot of people, obviously, they own stocks and real estate, and they just say, secretly they just want to return to QE and lower rates and anything that will get their stock portfolio up.
Yeah,
But they know it's a Ponzi. Like they know it.
yeah, I agree with you. I think that they're trapped. I mean, even Joe, I've been saying, hey guys, like they're trapped. There's no way out, right? Like they can try to thread this needle with this through this tiny little gap, but then you're coming up against another issue, and you got to then thread that needle perfectly. Like it. I've been saying that since like October, November, and I still believe that is true. I still believe that there's really like no easy way out. There's no simple way out. There's risks with like everything, right? Like no matter which kind of topic or metric or issue you look at, the window of operations with which they can make it is getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And stagflation, I think, presents like a really big problem because, and Joe, I think, would be the first one to admit this. I mean, he said this morning, that they're kind of trapped, in his own
Hey,
words. But
Robert, can you just give us a really dumbed down definition of stagflation?
yeah, so stagflation is just lower growth and higher inflation. So in my opinion, kind of what we've been seeing. Like if you're a if you're a normal everyday working American, that's kind of like what you've been experiencing since, I would argue, 2022. So like your wages aren't growing, economic activity is not booming, right? Like consumer spending and eating out at restaurants and buying stuff, buying gifts at Best Buy, and all that kind of stuff is just kind of stagnant. Economic activity isn't declining, but it's also not rising. It's not in a
Robert,
kind of upward cycle.
would it be correct, uh, maybe just correct me if I'm wrong, how it actually comes across to the average citizen where necessities become more expensive, but people do things like sell a third car or motorcycle or a boat. So those things, some things become cheaper. It becomes a really weird scenario because people are forced to pay more for the essentials, but then, non-essential items oftentimes in these stagflation type environments become cheaper. So it's a really
Yeah.
strange thing when it hits the folks like, the average Joe. So it's an odd situation, and we haven't incurred it, very often in modern terms, I don't think. When was the
Yeah,
last
not
stagflation? Like the 70s or something?
yeah, not really in our lifetimes unless you're a boomer. Yeah, and that's exactly correct. Like what they call consumer staples, which is stuff you need. There's no way around it. You got to buy it. Those, the demand is relatively constant because people still need that kind of stuff. They need food and they need, clothing and that kind of stuff. But consumer discretionary, right, like fancy clothes or the kind of treats that you might give yourself, that sector tends to do much more poorly. And yeah, it like for the everyday American, stagflation is really kind of the worst of both worlds. And I would argue that like this is the kind of vibe that we've been getting from consumer sentiment surveys and kind of just talking to people on the, everyday people about how they feel. I think this is kind of what it's picking up on, which is, the economy is not booming. Everything still costs too much, right? And
Robert,
and it's going to squeeze them.
it's been like 2.5 or 3%. I mean, that's decent, right? I mean, I don't say booming, but it doesn't seem like it's slow.
Well, yeah, but see if
Look at corporate
inflation.
earnings have been pretty decent too. Like,
Well, exactly. No, exactly. So this is the K-shaped economy. If you're a multinational, a large corporation, yeah, you've done great because you like the Mag 7, for example, the trillion-dollar market cap companies. They're sitting on tons of cash. And so they have all that cash getting, 4.5, 4.7, whatever it's been over the past couple of years with higher rates. So their net interest income is booming. You know, like the big corporations that can kind of offshore and outsource jobs to cheaper, like the big companies are doing well. I bet though, if you were to ask, you know, just a small little mom and pop, you know, small business, they would say something much differently, right? Because they are dealing with higher rates. They're more likely to need debt to finance kind of their activities. They're paying higher rates, right? So what has happened is you've gotten this K-shaped economy where if you have, like, you're either doing really well or you're doing pretty horribly, and that goes for people, you know, individuals, but also for businesses.
Where's something where we can capture that data of the small business, like profits, revenue, and sentiment? I don't trust sentiment personally. Is there any place we can actually get the numbers?
Hey,
Yeah, I
Simon
mean,
had his hand
there's
up as well. So Simon, feel free to chime in when you get when one of these two gents comes up for air.
there are surveys. They call it soft data. They're
Yeah,
not.
I've
I
seen that. I
agree
don't
with
really
you.
like that personally.
I agree. Yeah, there's a lot of noise and like politics kind of comes in, so it's hard to really get good signal. But yeah, just kind of generally, you know, you're going to pay more if you're a small business. You don't have the huge margins because you got to pay Americans. You're not paying Vietnamese, right? So like you have it much harder, and you're much more likely to need debt, and that debt is costing more and more. We see, you know, kind of charge off rates for credit cards kind of going vertical. So yeah, so it's created this kind of tale of two cities kind of economy where there's kind of two classes of businesses and then two classes of individuals.
Yeah, so I think it's like so I learned a long time ago never to bet against the Fed. Um, and but now we've got these like new fiscal tools that are coming in as well. But if you just try and think of the world as there's three options, right? There's one where they engineer a scenario or the political process forces just a return to the continuation of the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, push up stocks, print money, and the only way to beat inflation is to own assets and kind of the boomer economy that they secretly really, really want to return to. Um, or you actually bite the bullet and make a change, which means that there's going to be a contraction. There's going to be, you know, it's you have to bite, you have to go through that. Um,
Yeah, but
or there's going to be,
that's a debt
yeah,
deflation, right? Like in
yeah,
in a highly leveraged economy and fractional reserve banking, right? Rehypothecation, all the issues we talk, you know, frequently about. Like in a true, I agree that that's what we should do. It would be extremely painful for, I don't know, 5 years. Like it would
yeah.
be very bad, but I do agree that's kind of the most healthy way. I just don't see it as
How
likely,
would
you
that
know?
help the
So
average man,
that's,
though? How would that help the
yeah,
average
but so
man?
that's, well, it won't. So that's scenario two, because scenario two, essentially, you know, you have a contraction in debt, you have defaults on debt, you know, and you have a what a typical recession used to look like, but we like the Fed has decided that that world doesn't exist anymore. So you got to suffer it at such a severe pace that they say, right, never happen again. So it's roll over. Or you end up with this crazy scenario that we have right now, where there's some monetary tools, there's some fiscal tools, and they're so unconventional because they're just tools like even something like issuing a stable coin or tariffs or trade wars or like you know, firing up a war with your allies and just really crazy things that's leading to what the Fed is trying to say, maybe stagflation, which is, you know, he didn't they didn't use the word inflation as transitory, but they said we're preparing for inflation and decreased growth. And so then if that is combined with the government like trying to shrink their employment force, and then there's whatever AI is doing, you know, that's some crazy ass scenario to be in, which is just, and that's what I was trying to say on the call. No one knows what the hell they're doing. Like, people are coming up and giving opinions saying, yeah, but if you do tariffs and then you deregulate the environment and you get back to growth and everyone becomes productive again, then suddenly you're able to thread the needle. And then they start talking about, but yeah, that has an impact on 10-year treasuries and the Fed will do that. And literally no one has an effing clue, like
Well,
how to get through this thing.
yeah, Simon, I would say there are like it there are like you can I think the issue is that, like, for example, that what you're referring to with Eladio, like he wasn't taking it throw out any quote unquote solution, right? Let's say deregulate, higher growth, stimulate, right? Like they did in the 80s under Reagan. Okay, well, when you do that, you have higher nominal growth. So what happens to the 10-year? The 10-year would go up. That blows out the deficit, because now you are if taxation, right, does not change, which they've not been talking about raising taxes. So your revenue isn't changing, but now you're the government,
Wait,
and
when you have more
the
revenue if you're
cost
booming?
of the cost no well no the cost of your debt, sure, as a share of GDP, you're getting taxes, right? You're getting income tax, corporate tax. But what I'm saying is the cost of the debt goes up, because treasury yields follow nominal growth, right? So you can't, you pick whatever quote unquote solution they have, and you end up, like Simon's describing, kind of in a position where it's like, well, if we do this, then there's these two or three problems. Okay, well, if we do this, there's these a few problems. Like, there is no easy way out where there's not conflicting, countervailing forces that are kind of working against you. They're just kind of trapped. And I mean, the fact that even Joe kind of admitted that, I think is, I mean, he's not one to kind of say that kind of stuff. And I think he recognizes what a lot of us do, which is there's no easy way out. Tariffs or this or deregulation or cutting taxes, or like, you go down the list of any potential solution, and there's just a gazillion problems that then have knock-on effects, right? Like, each of those problems then causes more problems. And so this is why I describe, like, the window of operations with which kind of things can go along and function well. That window of operations is like getting more and more narrow as time goes on.
Yeah, so let's bring that back to what we need to do as Bitcoiners, because obviously, like, so let's say they manage to successfully get the Fed to do the old model to stimulate. They try and figure out how to kick the can down the road a little bit further. Then Bitcoin into the Trump administration would likely just have the bull market we're kind of used to, based upon policies, deregulation, and Federal Reserve stimulus. Then if we ended up in this crazy world, like, Bitcoin can potentially, fall with stocks, but then the long-term value prevails, in which case I think everyone needs dry powder. They need cash so they don't have to sell their Bitcoin, because who knows what will happen in that world. Or if we enter into, okay, let's ride the system, I think you would end up with an outflow of I can't imagine why there wouldn't be an inflow into Bitcoin in that type of environment, which is what essentially I think BlackRock is trying to pitch right now. They keep pitching. They're really trying to say Bitcoin is risk off.
Yeah,
And
they keep
I
saying in
listen
their
to
messaging
BlackRock
it's a
more.
flight to safety, right?
Well, I listen to BlackRock more than I listen to a bunch of people that are kind of biased towards the American economy, because BlackRock doesn't give a shit about America. BlackRock is directing the economy. And so if BlackRock is saying that, it's either just narrative, or it's actually they are trying to manifest into existence that Bitcoin is risk off, because they know that there is a big shift in capital flows that they are preparing their customers for, and they want their customers to go along with that. So to me, I think the important thing is you just got to be in a position where you don't need to sell your Bitcoin, which means you have to have enough fiat dry powder and you're not over indebted or over leveraged. Because I really don't know where the controllers of finance are taking it next. And it could go in any of those directions at any time. But to me, it feels like a shift. I think, an indicator is that Joe, who would ordinarily, always be positive about the tools and things that can be done, if he's starting to get a little bit uncertain, then it's kind of an indicator that, and the BlackRock narrative, that there is something. And I'm not trying to be a doomer or anything, but I just think everyone needs to get their Bitcoin strategy right, given that I think Bitcoin survives all of those, but there may be something you have to survive through in one of those scenarios.
Richard, welcome to the stage. You've got your hand up. What say ye?
Well, I've got a few thoughts on this. Yeah, I think the American economy, global economy is going to struggle a little bit. Like one of the things I foresee is cigarette prices are going to radically go up, which is going to be difficult for us all. But Simon, I did want to interject and disagree with you. I think while BlackRock does have a massive impact on the global economy, I wouldn't say they're necessarily directing it. I think you're discounting the impact of Bitcoin podcasters in the global economy, and the Bitcoin podcasters are doing an incredible job of directing it. I mean, as you see, the Bitcoin adoption is just off the map. The president of the United States is a Bitcoin pleb, and I think we should give credit to the Bitcoin podcasters. And the bull case for everybody listening in the audience, if you're afraid right now, you're afraid of the price going down in a liquidity crunch, the best way to counteract that is to start a Bitcoin podcast, because the more Bitcoin podcasts, the higher the price will go up. You'll at least get a few listeners, and if we all start our own Bitcoin podcast, our moms or our siblings, our family members, or cousins, or aunt and uncles, we could probably convince them to listen to it. They'll be learning about Bitcoin, and the buy pressure will counteract any negative sentiment in the market possible. But that's just my 2 cents.
Richard, I got a question for you. What Bitcoin podcast do you think they showed to Trump to turn him into a pleb?
That's a very good question. I think probably what Bitcoin did. I think that was Podcom's flagship podcast up until recently, and to some degree it still is now. There's the speculation that we've been trying to solve. I was talking with Pierre Richard the other day about this. Podconf doesn't have a flagship podcast right now. I know what Bitcoin did is rebuilding, and I'm bullish on it, but I don't really see any contenders at the moment. Like Marty Bent's been trying real hard with TFTC, and he's been doing a good job, but he gets in the weeds sometimes. And like, to be the flagship Bitcoin podcast, you kind of have to be catering to the NPCs. You know what I mean? You can't be too based. And I think that's one of the things that's really hurting Marty in this case.
Yeah, I think you bring up some good points there. No, in all seriousness, though, it's a fun little reset to the room. I did invite the Bugle guys earlier, Terrence, just FYI, because it was the first day of Maxi Madness. So I figured we could have some fun, and wanted to give them a shout out, because Maxi Madness last year was a pretty fun thing. And this year they've obviously started it out today. We talked about that very briefly early on. So thanks, man, for coming by. Richard, did you have anything you just wanted to talk to people about? Feel free to throw anything in the nest if you want to share stuff. And then just FYI, I do have a quick work call I have to hop on, Terrence. I'll be back probably 10-15 minutes, okay?
I also have to leave here in a second, but I did want to say to everybody listening, Macro Minutes is getting slaughtered right now by Yellow. So if you want to help a friend out,
I
help
voted for yellow, just to clarify. So
You know, a lot of the contenders
I
have
leave
been
for 5 minutes
friendly.
and we come back to this again. Oh my god! I
Well,
know whose
we have a
voice that is,
credentialed
by the way.
journalist on stage, Lauren. So
Uh-huh.
as you
Yeah,
can see,
in his
Lo-
mind.
A
No, I'm
lot of
kidding. Bye, kid.
the contenders have been attempting to use reverse psychology. It's worked out really well for June Seth, who is slightly beating Max Kaiser right now. But yeah, help out Macro Minutes. Go vote for him and Maxi Madness, and don't let Yellow just steamroll him like he is right now. Because I think Macro Minutes deserves a
What
better
What's the
performance.
update on Dennis Porter?
Um, yeah, so I mean, this is shocking to me. Dennis Porter is getting beaten by Shinobi right now. I mean, I didn't think anybody would vote for Shinobi because Shinobi just calls all of us retards every day and doesn't really make anybody feel good about themselves. Um, so I'm shocked by this. I'm shocked that Dennis is losing. I figured that he would be having a much better performance due to all of his bullish announcements and um, his work in the states. Unfortunately, the states are not leading right now, but he still has a chance to rebound.
Oof. You know who doesn't have a chance? Fucking Dieter. He's getting shit on right now in that poll.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I figured that people would want a matchup between American Hoddle and Dieter round two.
Oh, what do we go with? The American or the whiny fucking American Jew? It's one of the two. Sorry. Morning
But yeah,
space, my bad.
I appreciate the one last thing I will say there was a lot of tether talk. You know, at the Bugle, we've been ahead of the curve. We have stopped pricing Bitcoin in dollars and we have moved to pricing it in USDT. And I would encourage everybody to do the same because that's where the future's heading. So just makes sense to be on the page right now instead of kind of getting blindsided by it here relatively soon when they're the number one buyer of treasuries in the world.
Hold
Go
on, was
Tether.
that was serious, right? You talking about a DPEG of banking, or was that a joke?
I think that was a joke.
It was a damn good
Sarcasm.
joke,
It's
but
sarcasm.
actually there was a
Yeah.
seriousness to it as well. That you could end up depegging, because yeah, the non-fractional reserve versus fractional reserve thing.
Terrence and Macro, man, I leave for 5 minutes and the space denigrated from a high level discussion about the economy and stagflation, and now we digress to
whoa,
crypto
whoa,
influencers and
Lauren, hold on.
yes,
Richard had a great point about stagflation's impact on cigarette pricing. I don't know if you heard that or not, but that was
Just
what
listen to his
segued
voice.
us. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
that was what
re-listen to the
segued us.
episode.
So, I
Okay,
mean, it
okay,
was
fair enough.
relevant, and you missed it because you weren't here. So,
I'm only half joking, or maybe 5%.
Not gonna lie, I may or may not be checking tobacco futures right now.
If you look at the rise in China, so China has one of the highest rates of cigarette smokers in the world, and if you question how they built such a powerful economy, it was on the back of cigarette smokers, and this is like one of the really bearish cases for the American economy, unless all these taxes are slashed on cigarettes. I foresee there kind of being a death spiral in the stagflationary, you know, macro environment because cigarette prices go up, people's incomes go down, people smoke less cigarettes, productivity just falls through the floor. The only thing really, you know, that can kind of offset that horrible scenario is if AI automates a lot of things and makes up for the lack of productivity and the lack of and the falling cigarette smoking rates.
Richard, if I can push back just a little bit on that point. All right, so first off, as far as the Chinese like tobacco intake, are they going with mostly Turkish or are they going with American blends? If you're aware of like what they favor as far as like flavor. Second, there seems to be an inverse correlation between like how economically productive you're being and how much smoking you do.
Um,
I'll land it there.
Well, actually, and this is one of the reasons to be bullish on the United States is Chinese people, they smoke these garbage Chinese and Japanese cigarettes that have like these weird flavors. So you think of the what are they called? They're the shitcoin cigarettes essentially, where you like the Camel Crushes, but they have like weird like fruit flavored cigarettes, and they just taste awful. It's like smoking cough syrup is what it tastes like. Um, so that's one reason to be bullish on America. We have the gold standard, the Bitcoin standard of cigarettes, the Marlboro Reds. Chinese people typically don't like those, but yeah.
It sounds like we're talking about the prison economy. What's next? Postage stamps? Yet again, I'm kidding. Hey, Puncher, did your guy ever come up or come into the room? And then B, throw your hands up again if you want to, Richard. If you want to interject or start a whole new conversation or topic, or go back to one of the latter ones. I see Dark's in the room now. Dark will kick an invitation down. I'm sure one of the co-hosts already has. But anyway,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead,
threw one to
Dark.
him earlier, so he can come up whenever
Super.
he wants.
Sure, wise.
So I'm going to push back against. Oh, he's gone. Never mind.
Yeah, he's gone. It's all good. We'll transition to serious talks now. So we've had our fun. It's nice to break the spaces up sometimes with a little bit of silliness, but obviously we
Got to
are
mix a little
here
bit of
to try to
retardation
help
in there.
educate people. So I don't want it to devolve fully into just a meme space. So thank you all for indulging a little bit of funny time this morning. But we can go back to talking really any topics you guys want to discuss. I think the tether one we pretty much covered.
Hey, Macro, before we leave it, was Terrence in the running, in the
I don't know,
brackets?
Terrence. Did you pay the bugle enough to get into the bracket this year like I did?
You're gonna laugh. Was not even aware of what this is, so I must have been out of the loop with all of this. And I haven't even looked, but I'm sure I would. Someone would have pinged me if I was in it. So I don't know why I would be in it because it looks like
I
it's mostly
Yeah,
a lot of you guys that have been here for a long time who have been memeing and whatnot. I'm guessing.
I thought the criteria was you had to have been invited to Sailor's 100K party.
No, the criteria is you have to at least craft your pants one time in the last year.
Oh, does it?
S-
Oh,
s-
never mind.
by the way, whenever I become like an unproductive like like panel member, just kick me off.
So right now, always.
Yeah, pretty much constantly.
Yeah, pretty much constantly. No, so there's no rhyme or reason as to who gets into the bracket. They did this last year for the first time ever, and Yellow won. It was Yellow versus Sailor, but Sailor actually retweeted some of their stuff last year, so it got pretty big. But anyways, it's just yeah, it's a fun thing in the meming side of the Bitcoin community. But they have four brackets, Lauren. They have it's thinkers, influencers, memers, and podconf. So those are the four. But anyways, yeah.
Gotcha. No, I kind of like the transition to like the influencers as well, because I struggle with, having, I don't know, like folks with a God complex inside the Bitcoin community where they get a little bit too Heidi and big for their britches, and not a huge fan, but at the same point, I do understand that, you do need to make a living and pay your bills. And you do want a big audience because you want to, more people to share Bitcoin with. So I just struggle because I really think it's one of those things where you're walking the tightrope, just trying to make the right decision. So I don't want to throw a lot of shade. I used to throw a lot of shade at like Dennis Porter and people like that. But I think he's probably a net positive for Bitcoin, even though I don't agree with all of his tactics and whatnot. And I apologize to him live on a different space and whatnot. So I don't know. I struggle personally with, being able to thread the needle. I think there's guys out there that are doing a great job of it. Like I'm a big fan of BTC Sessions because he seems like a very humble dude and is able to get a lot of quality content out to people that's actually useful. I've used his content tons to set up nodes and do different things, wallets and whatnot. So I think there are people out there that are doing a great job and definitely we want these kind of people in the space and putting content out there, and it is, there's value, and so like, they deserve all of the sats that are thrown their way for sure. So I don't know, these kinds of things are fun, but I just ego check is a big one for me. There.
Sorry, I was just going to say, so since you're not going to say it, I will say it. Dennis Porter is a self-aggrandizing asshole. That being said, though, I rely on self-deprecating humor just to keep myself like a little bit more humble than I would normally be, because God knows his ego would go unchecked if I didn't.
That's a good point, and I think this comes what TC says a lot, and I totally agree with a lot of TC's points when it comes to, and the word toxic maximalist probably means different things in each of our brains, but I think it is important to keep folks in check, especially if their ego gets way out and whatnot, but then also to keep the integrity of Bitcoin in check, whether it is what we're doing physically with hardware and whatnot, but also with our voices and saying like, hey, no, this guy's off the rocker here and we don't need to go this direction. So I definitely think it's important to do that as a community and use the hive mind to do it. So I think there's definitely a time and a place for it, but then we can go far, the other way where we're just calling somebody an F and A hole just because they don't agree with our takes on the economy. So I think it's definitely a fine line, and there's definitely times to use both. I know people have thrown things at me in like DMs and whatnot, like, "Oh, Jesus was overturning, the money changers," and I think I'm like, well, yeah, that's called Bitcoin, man. And I think like triggering people with just saying things like, "We have the greatest weapon," and then maybe throw in of peace of that humanity has ever seen. That way we can throw in the triggering word of weapon and yet of peace at the same time. So I don't know, man. It's just thank God for Bitcoin because it's just very simple and doesn't change. And humans are crazy, and the best parts about Bitcoin, and also the worst parts about Bitcoin.
By the way, can we get a wellness check on Bitcoin Tina?
Yeah, that it was funny that that name popped up again, and I've seen him in a couple of spaces, but Puncher's got his hand up, and Puncher also, I think, knows a thing or two about Tina. Puncher.
I've had my knockdowns with Tina, but I get a kick out of them. Hey, Loren, Art, my buddy Art is in the audience, but I was wondering, I see Darkside too. Is there any chance you could make Art a speaker or invite him to speak, and Darkside as well? Because I think some of the questions Art might have are around MicroStrategy.
I tried to add Dark 2 or 3 times, so I'm guessing he's not available. But I don't see Art. Do you see Art, Lauren?
Oh, that's what I was doing. I was scanning through and typing different things. I'm gonna have to go back to our message Puncher just to make sure I have the right person here. I'll keep looking.
Yeah, I don't see an Art. While you're looking for Art, Lauren, I thought I'd play a clip if my phone is playing clips.
Oh yeah, that'd be
It
great.
wasn't this morning. I heard
You've got
Matt.
it all queued up. Nice.
I heard Matt Hogan on a podcast. The CIO of Bitwise, and it was a really good podcast. He was talking about sort of the success of the Bitcoin ETFs and where they are today and where he thinks they're going. And obviously, most all of us here in the room self custody our Bitcoin, fortunately, but the ETFs are sort of a good indicator of the retail hive mind. Anyways, I think it was Nat Brunell's. One of her coin stories. Anyways, I'll play it. It's a short clip. Put your thumbs down if you can't hear it, because for some reason it wasn't working this morning. And it looks like it's still not working.
And Lauren, I texted you Art a picture, a screenshot of him in the audience.
All right, so I'm guessing no one heard that.
No,
That is
I
Yeah,
correct.
think
I
everyone
can't
was just
hear anything.
reflecting.
Oh, okay. All right, here. Put your thumbs down if you don't hear it this time. I didn't see any thumbs down, so I'm like, oh, it's working. Okay, here we go.
No, no. I was expecting the ETFs to be successful, but they were so much more. It's so crazy. Before the Bitcoin ETFs launched, the most successful ETF of all time gathered $5 billion in its first year. That was the ceiling. ETFs did 37, right? 37 is so much more. I was optimistic they might do 10.
Yeah.
Right. I thought it was going to be huge. We had worked on it for like 6 years. So, of course, we thought it would be huge. But $37 billion is crazy. All that said, I bet we do 50 this year. I think people, if they think it's like this bell curve and down we go, it's not. Every ETF almost in history that's been a success does more in year 2 than year 1, and more in year 3 than year 2, and more in year 4 than year 3. For the reasons we started about talking about at the beginning, half of the market can't even buy this thing yet. Right. And the other half is just learning. And the people who bought it in the first year are probably going to double down. Think about the first time you bought Bitcoin. Do you own more today than you owned then? Or is your holdings, of course you own more. Like that's just the direction of travel. So I was blown away, but I think this year will be even bigger.
All right, good. Glad that played.
Yeah, that played great. It sounded like maybe his voice sounded a lot like if Joe Carlasare had a baby with like Dr. Drew or something. Anyway, I invited Art up on stage, so hopefully we can get him, and then maybe we'll send a invite over to Punter Jeff so that we can have another expert on MicroStrategy in the room. Sorry, go ahead, take it away, Terrence. Or Puncher.
Yeah, go Puncher.
No, I just I see Darkside's up as a speaker now, so I'm sure he could answer any questions Art
Oh,
might have
good morning, Dark.
if he does come up.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing today?
Ahoy, Darkside. Are you underway?
I'm on the boat, but we have not left shore yet. So I'm just testing the Wi-Fi, the Starlink. It's working beautifully, so all's good.
Enjoy the family, buddy.
Thank you, Puncher. Thank you so much. Gonna have a big 90th birthday for my dad. I'm super excited about it.
And if Art, if you're listening in, I told everybody earlier that you're a longtime Wall Street guy. Probably done a lot of similar things to Darkside and some other folks who are now Bitcoiners. And you had questions about MicroStrategy in particular, and maybe Bitcoin as well. So this is a safe space generally. Not that we're into safe spaces, but just wanted to, if you had questions, come up, and I think we have a wealth of knowledge here to answer any questions you might have and concerns, and they're valid concerns. So if you jump up, we'll get to them. If not, we'll just continue with the show.
We've thrown the another invite to Art. Just have to respond to it and come up here. You're in a safe nest, surrounded by friends. But no, it could get a little heated. But hopefully, we would like to hash it out. And there's a lot of folks in here who are huge fans of MicroStrategy, and there's others who are not. So we want to hear your side of the story. So come on up, Art. We'd love to hear from you.
Hey, while we're waiting for Art, Loren, do you want me to play what Trump spoke about at that digital summit? Just he chimed in via video. He spoke for almost 3 minutes, and the first minute is mostly just rehashing what we know. But I can play some of the stuff that is slightly newer, or at least he's saying it in a newer way, if you're interested.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if this one works too. Just put the thumbs down again if it doesn't.
That same week, I signed an order creating the brand new strategic Bitcoin reserve and a U.S. digital asset stockpile, which will allow the federal government to maximize the value of its holdings instead of foolishly selling them for a fraction of their long-term value, which is exactly what Biden did. He got a fraction of their value. We're ending the last administration's regulatory war on crypto and Bitcoin, and that includes stopping the lawless Operation Choke Point 2.0. Operation Choke Point went beyond regulation, and I mean far beyond. It was a form of lawfare through government weaponization. Frankly, it was a disgrace. But as of January 20th, 2025, all of that is over. I've also called on Congress to pass landmark legislation creating simple, common sense rules for stablecoins and market structure. With the right legal framework, institutions large and small will be liberated to invest, innovate, and take part in one of the most exciting technological revolutions in modern history. It's so big, it's, I think, as big as you can get. Pioneers like you will be able to improve our banking and payment system and promote greater privacy, safety, security, and wealth for American consumers and businesses alike. You will unleash an explosion of economic growth, and with the dollar backed stablecoins, you'll help expand the dominance of the US dollar. And many, many years to come, it'll be at the top, and that's where we want to keep it. We only want to keep it at the top always. I can already see that the energy and passion of the crypto community is the kind of spirit that built our country. And it is exciting to watch as you invent the future of finance. And right here, it's going to be right here in the USA, the good old USA. Together, we will make America the undisputed Bitcoin superpower and the crypto capital of the world. Thank you. Good luck. God bless America.
All right, there you go. Jesse.
America. I can't hear Jesse.
I don't hear Jesse either.
I think he might be AFK.
Got a couple new people as well. Teddy Bitcoins.
Teddy
Welcome.
and Matt, welcome.
What's up,
Morning.
guys?
Hello. Hello.
Man, fucking Trump is bullish. Let's go.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, how's it going? Teddy?
Oh,
Hey Teddy, who are you up against in the bracket?
I don't even know this guy,
Yet
man.
we digress.
I don't even know this guy.
And I voted for you this morning, bud.
I appreciate that, but I'm gonna lose to him. But I don't even know who he is. Hey, everybody in this spaces right now, follow Loren. This guy's hosting these spaces, doing a killer job. Make sure to give him a follow. His co-host, some of these speakers on stage are super smart. I'm not one of them. I'm on the left side of the curve, but I still figured out Bitcoin. So, but yeah, give these guys a follow. And yeah, what are we chatting about today,
I
boys?
love you too, Teddy. It's crazy what $5 Canadian bill and a toonie will get you. So $7, man. $7 for that shout out. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that.
Hey, can you guys hear me now, or is it still messed up?
You're
Yeah,
going through,
Jesse.
yeah.
Aha! Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say how bullish I am after all this stuff today and just listening to these clips. Terrence, good job pulling these clips in. But like, I don't understand how anyone cannot be like insanely bullish right now, hearing all of these things and from all these smart people, and then just what we heard from the freaking president of the United States of America. And I mean, you got to read between the lines on these things. Like that's my comment for the people listening in these rooms. Like you're not going to get the detailed information that you want. You're going to have to read between the lines. And think about the ETF statements that have been made earlier in this show. Like half the people can't even get this stuff right now. Half the market can't even get to it. And most of the people who are on this stage, yeah, we self custody, but you have to realize, you have to be a realist and understand that like not everyone's going to self custody. These are signals, and the ETFs is a massive signal. The SBR is a massive signal, and these are like I don't know who that was, the other clip, Terrence, who that was speaking about the ETFs, but I thought that was very well said and eloquent, that you can just see that the trajectory of these things in year one, in year two, it's going to be more than year one. In year three, it's going to be more than year two. So yeah, I'm just very excited, very excited. Teddy, agree with you, man. Very bullish on everything, and yeah.
Awesome. Hey, before we go to Durwise, I wanted to give a shout out to a new speaker. Maybe we'll give him the mic after Durwise is finished. Gigi, not to be confused with green suit Gigi, but Gigi's been doing a lot of podcasts, was able to recently quit his fiat job to go full time into Bitcoin space, which a lot of us dream of. So we'll give him the mic later. Maybe he can give us some names of people that he's had on the pod recently and stuff. But first, let's go back to
Oh, I
Durwire.
was just gonna say, can we please like start a movement where we start referring to the ETF as 6102s?
That's not a bad idea. I like that actually. Yeah, the 6102s. I don't know. Were you in here when we were talking about the tether thing? That
I
might
caught
be
the
the
tail end of it.
yeah. I think that might be the 6102s right in our face. But anyway, Gigi, are you able to speak, sir? I know you're in a different country, so it's probably
Other countries
super
can
late.
still speak, Lauren.
That is true. They may be three in
Hey,
the
hey,
morning.
hey, guys.
Hey, there he
Good
is.
afternoon. Good morning
Good
to
morning,
everyone.
good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are.
How's everyone doing?
Awesome. I'm excited because I think my friend Eric and I will be making second appearances together this time on your show, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's right. On Tuesday, we're having you, Loren, back and Eric V Stacks for the first
Eric
roundtable
V, we love
discussion.
Eric V.
We
Puncher and
do.
I have some stories with Eric V that may involve some of Eric V's crop. I did not partake, however, I witnessed it all, and it appeared to be good stuff. So shout out Eric V. Puncher has his hand up real quick. Puncher, sir.
Hey, I just wanted to, we broached this the other day. So there's a clip of Sailor talking to some RIAs. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but he was being interviewed, and I guess the interviewer was kind of skeptical, to say the least. And a lot of the folks in the audience had questions about I guess, the regulatory hurdles of them recommending Bitcoin or any kind of Bitcoin allocation, whatever form that took, to their high net worth clients. And and Sailor goes on a master class for about 20 minutes, even with that kind of interviewer firing off almost like condescending questions to him about why there are no regulatory hurdles, why this is an asset, why companies can hold it on their balance sheet, and not to do it is basically leaving 30% CAGR on the table every year. And it's really something. And I had an experience about, gosh, it must have been about 3 years ago. I was standing in for the Wyoming Reserve at an RIA event, and it was mostly about qualified opportunity zones. And we were the only ones that wasn't a real estate play. So at our table, there were literally like six deep RIAs firing questions at me, very hostile about Bitcoin and kind of all the concerns we've all heard forever. And but they were there and they wanted to know about it, and they were trying to like stump the dummy with me. And because we have a 20% up to a 20% allocation at the Wyoming Reserve in our holdings. Um, to see where we were then 3 years ago to where we are now. Basically, Sailor was telling them, look, there are no regulatory hurdles. You have the president of the United States and an entire administration telling you that the United States government is buying Bitcoin. If that's not, and it's an asset class, so in Treasury you can't hold. I think there's a limit on how much security you can hold and other forms of investments other than Treasuries. And he talks about how treasuries is just poison in a company's balance sheet, and how that forces them, like Microsoft and Amazon and everybody else, who basically decapitalize their company because they have nothing better to do with their treasury. So they decapitalize in the form of dividends and distributions and stock buybacks. So um, I guess my point is to see where we are now and what could potentially be coming in the form of nation state acquisition and adoption, as well as large company adoption into Treasury. Um, I just feel like we're on the precipice of that as I speak.
Hey, Puncher, I totally get what you're saying. I think isn't that the one where he was talking about somebody like the Oracle of Omaha losing like 3 billion a month by just holding on to the cash? I think
Yes,
maybe in the same
exactly,
statement. But
exactly.
like you make good points too, and I think I brought this up yesterday's space or maybe the day before. I can't remember now, but I used to be a Merrill Edge. One of my retirement accounts was with Merrill Edge, and they weren't allowing any of their customers to purchase any of the ETFs. And so it took me a couple of weeks, but I was able to move that over into like Fidelity or a different account, and I was able to buy. However, recently, I think within the last few days, they're allowing their 1 million plus customers actual to the ability to purchase the ETF. So things are changing, and the big guys are figuring it out. But I'm with you. It's just a learning curve, and it's a process. So totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and I'm trying to ham and egg it at the last minute, doing 5 other things, getting art up here. But art comes from that world. So I just wanted to have some, maybe next time or some other time. Maybe he's not comfortable coming up right now or whatever. I don't know what the situation is, but just to have some guys talk him through his very legitimate concerns, similar to like Saylor did in that interview, because they are legitimate concerns. But most of them can be answered very simply now, whereas maybe a year ago that wasn't the case.
Ham
Hey,
and egg it, buddy.
Puncher, I'm in agreement with you. I think a big element of this was what Trump just said in the clip from Terrence about choke point, right? Like I was affected by Project Choke Point. I could not get a bank account. I'm sure lots and lots of startups have those same stories. But even for folks that are, at these major institutions, right? Like they hear about that stuff, they get worried about those things. I mean, what do you guys think, everyone on the stage? Like, what's it gonna take for these guys to, like, sailors like banging them on the head like, guys, you guys are idiots, and people still seem a little bit scared. I feel like it should be happening now. I feel like once the SBR was announced, that was it. That was the moment. Like, okay, everyone can get bank accounts, everyone can do the ETFs, everyone can do their corporate reserves. But what do you guys think? Like, are we there now? Or how long do we think this is going to take, I guess, is the question. Are we at 5 years away? Are we a year away? Last year we were in a completely different position. So I'm curious what people think.
I'm going to chime in real quick just because I've gone through this inside channels with people. One of the big things or positives that I saw so far this year was, the ability for banks to start, the process of custodying Bitcoin. However, I didn't realize that that is quite a process. And so initially it looks like they'll be looking into the current, places like Coinbase, Anchorage, and others to actually fulfill that for them while they're actually going through the process, which can take up to 3 years, is what I was told. I didn't do a lot of research, so don't quote me on that. Go out and do more research. But it looks like there will be a bit of a process to actually, get to some of these points where banks are actually custodians instead of just, the handful we have now, the exchanges and the other, few that we have. So I personally think that is a huge step in the right direction because there's, also thought out there that could be some price fixing and maybe double counting of some coins and other shenanigans. I'm not weighing in because I'm not smart enough to realize if that is going on or not, but it would definitely eliminate that as the coins were distributed and that, when places like Coinbase have fewer coins to mess with, then the shenanigan abilities become quite minuscule. So I don't know, man. I think it's a process, and it might take a few years, but it's just all jet fuel that I see on the horizon. So I'm
Yeah.
excited. I just did want to say hi to Puppy too. Hey, Pubs. Go ahead, Puncher. Go ahead,
Well,
Punch.
I just think if you think about the last 3 months, we went from 108 down to I guess 77. Like that kind of volatility for an RIA to dip their toe in that water and see something like that kind of fall, a drop. I mean, it's a feature, not a bug, but they are risk averse. Most of the guys I know who've risen to that level inside, the investment community, the high net worth community, they just can't stomach that. I'm curious, like Darkside, what do you think about that? Is the volatility the issue? Because who I do see adopting Bitcoin and have already dipped their toe and a whole lot more in the water are family offices, for whatever reason. And I think these registered investment advisors are probably the next to do it. And then it's corporate CFOs. And then obviously I think the nation state thing is, yeah, who knows? But it sure seemed like some algorithmic buying yesterday for at least a little bit.
Look, I think there's a narrative being kind of spread by the traditional finance world, and they've been consistent about this for the last 10 years, 15 years, that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. Right? Like that is the going narrative. Okay, so now if you're going to believe that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, right, then the next logical conclusion is, well, what breaks the Ponzi? how is it going to break, right? And then you would logically conclude from there that Sailor's holdings will cause, some liquidation event will cause the Ponzi scheme to break. So to me, it's a completely logical um, path to get from Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme to the way the Ponzi scheme breaks is the largest holder, or one of the largest holders, is forced into a liquidation. Okay, so where do I think that breaks? Is that all monetary systems are Ponzi schemes, every last one of them, right? In the traditional sense that new investors, new people adopting the currency, right, raise the currency's value. What makes Bitcoin so different as a monetary system is that it's scarce, right? That there's no additional printing and that it's completely consistent in as much as we know exactly what the inflation rate is. We know when the inflation rate ends. We know what time the inflation takes place. We know how much per day, but there's no miss. The transparency of Bitcoin is what makes it, well, I would add transparency in the proof of work system of Bitcoin is what makes it perfect money. But just to step back, I mean, the ultimate Ponzi scheme is the US dollar, right? Like you have one node that's printed 27 trillion, it's printed 10 trillion in the last few years. It's completely unlimited in as much as they're going to continue to print. So what causes I guess my question would be, what causes the US dollar Ponzi to break? Right. And
Bitcoin.
well, maybe, yeah, maybe. Maybe it's just, the over indebtedness, because remember the way the US dollar Ponzi is built, that you create new money by creating new debt. And ultimately you have to continue to create new debt in order to pay off the interest on the old debt. So the entire, like, the fraud of the US dollar is that somehow we're going to pay down our debt. We're never paying down our debt, right? The debt will only go up. The question for the US dollar is, can they create economic growth that exceeds the inflation rate? And that gets harder and harder to do as your debt service goes higher and higher. So look, I understand the TradFi position, because to be quite honest, when I saw Bitcoin as a TradFi guy in 2013, my first inclination was that this market could be cornered, much the same way the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market, right? Because of its scarcity, a few small players could get together and buy up the supply and then just jam the price higher. That was my initial inclination when I saw Bitcoin, right? Like I understood proof of work, I understood all this stuff, but from a TradFi perspective, right, the scarcity led me to the conclusion that could be cornered. It wasn't until 2018, 2019 that I began to appreciate, as the distribution of Bitcoin kind of went global, that I really began to appreciate, wow, this is something entirely different. This is the next monetary system of the world. So I think for many TradFi guys, they just haven't made that conclusion yet. That leap from Ponzi scheme to perfect money hasn't been made. But for a good group of some of the largest TradFi guys, they have made that leap. I mean, all you have to do is look at who the largest holders of the ETFs are. Izzy Englander, I think, still one of the top three holders. He's probably the smartest hedge fund on Wall Street, Millennium Partners, and they bought $2 billion worth right in the very first weeks. So it's kind of interesting, but I do understand where that TradFi perspective is coming from, and that narrative that Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme is going to end up hurting a lot of TradFi guys that avoid Bitcoin, and they'll get Bitcoin out of necessity, not out of desire. I do like the way Sailor puts it. Everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve.
Hey, Dark. One of the things that, and I'm not pointing out Art, but a lot of my friends who've done really well on Wall Street is, I start talking. I say, about they start talking about MicroStrategy, and I say, well, first you got to understand Bitcoin. and they'll say, "Look, I believe that the blockchain has its uses," and then right then and there, you're speaking a different language, right? We can't communicate. I can't move forward because until you understand Bitcoin, and the same thing with the guy interviewing Sailor in the example I mentioned earlier, he said the same thing. We're speaking past each other, and until you understand, because if you don't understand and believe in Bitcoin, MicroStrategy is all, and it is dependent on Bitcoin. Um,
Yeah,
and you
so
can't
like
make
the point you just made is the point I was making, is to get from Bitcoin as a Ponzi scheme to Bitcoin as perfect money. It's not the blockchain you need to understand, it's the proof of work network backing Bitcoin you need to understand, right? Like that's the hard part, because it requires a technical understanding of a lot of different um, facets of what makes Bitcoin so special, right? To understand how a block is formed, how miners enter the system, how nodes enter the system, how transactions are allocated, right? How block space works, right? Like all of those pieces to the puzzle, you really have to get a deep understanding of to understand proof of work and the Bitcoin proof of work network, right? Anything short of understanding that, it's Bitcoin is magic money and therefore it's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, and a lot of these
Yeah.
guys are super smart. Like they had to make snap decisions, very quick decisions about whether it's a security or a bond offering, a convert. Like they're super smart. So they're like, they all say the same thing. Give me the elevator pitch, and then and on Bitcoin, and then I'll move to
Yeah,
discuss MicroStrategy, and I'll tell you why it's a Ponzi scheme. I'm like, there is no elevator pitch. I can't give you the 30-second elevator pitch. It doesn't exist. You got to put in the work, and that's where the disconnect is.
yeah, and by the way, that's why I would argue that while being extremely intelligent, they're not extremely smart, right? A lot of Wall Street guys rely on their analysts to tell them the story, to put together an elevator pitch, to boil down an investment into a 30 slide deck, so that they can get their hands around the kind of the bigger picture of the investment thesis. But to be truly smart, you have to really understand the details, right? There's a difference. Intelligence and smarts to me are different.
I think you guys are nailing this. And Puncher, back to what you said about volatility. I think this is the macroeconomic situation we find ourselves in. It's the ego test paired with these finance people that haven't gotten there yet. And so when they see the volatility, they're looking at it like a stock. And I say this over and over again that it's not a stock. And Puncher, you're right. They have to understand the tech first. So Dark, I completely agree with your take, and then also tying it back to the volatility that Punchers talked about. I think that's where we're at. I think it's just people not taking the time, not passing the ego test, and it's just going to take some time for people to get there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I'll just wrap. I'll wrap it up here. Is that Bitcoin is so different than any other asset Wall Street has ever seen before. That's hard to get your hands around. But there's no other asset that anybody can give me that has these same characteristics. Remember, Wall Street's business is printing paper, right? So if you think back to the internet bubble, what happened? There was a scarcity of paper, right? What did that cause? That caused a gigantic bubble because people wanted to invest in this new great thing, the internet, but there were only a handful of actual companies that you could invest in. Well, then Wall Street went to business, renaming every company, whatever.com, and then printed just gargantuan amounts of paper to meet the investor demand. And then once everybody was fully invested in the internet, it crashed. Right now, Bitcoin is so much different than that. I could make the argument it's more like an agricultural commodity, but it's not, right? Because even when you look at like wheat or something that goes through a scarce period because of some weather event, there's wheat being grown all over the world. There's wheat in storage, right? So ultimately, wheat prices will spike up and they'll go crazy because of some crazy weather event, but in the end, they come right back down. See, Bitcoin doesn't have that characteristic. It's infinitely scarce, and there will be no solution to a scarcity issue, right? Like I understand that when this thing hits its tipping point, right, and the amount of money chasing Bitcoin far exceeds the amount of Bitcoin available, there's not going to be a tool at Wall Street's behest that they can go ahead and print more Bitcoin, or they can create new and better Bitcoin products. That's just not going to happen. So that's the gradually then suddenly argument. I'll land it there.
Yeah, and I apologize to everybody not being able to pull this off today. It was literally a last minute thing between Lauren and I last night. But I would like to do this exercise one day with all the smart minds on this, because in a respectful way, because I think we'll get a lot out of it, and obviously whoever we're talking to can get some legitimate questions answered.
Hey,
Hey,
Patrick,
Terrence,
did you want to
it
add
was
to this
Patrick, wasn't
conversation?
it? Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. All y'all made some good points. I'm kind of curious on how do you convince, your boglehead or your CPA, who's investing in something like Vanguard, total stock market index, and they just ignore everything else. They just invest in VT and they say, you know what, this is good enough. I don't want to guess on individual stocks or individual cryptos or whatever. They don't even want to bother to learn. So, how do you convince someone like that? Does shit really need to hit the fan where everybody is crowding into Bitcoin for them to finally realize what's going on?
Yes. I think a lot of the people who are like that, who are just on autopilot mode, you can't really have a savior complex about them. People have to be somewhat intellectually curious before you can even start to lead them down the right path. If people just want to have blinders on and just go through the motions day to day, and if that is unfortunately your financial advisor, then you probably want to find someone who's at least intellectually curious enough to have a conversation with you about it. Because I think if it's almost impossible to take somebody from 0 to 100. They have to at least get off 0 on their own from a knowledge standpoint and be curious. If they're not even that, then I don't think you can really help them, and that's probably a waste of your time.
Yeah, before we
Thanks.
go to hands, often we don't have Joe for very long because he's in between either hearings or depositions or something like that. Joe, good morning, afternoon, wherever you are. How
Yeah,
are you
it's the
doing, sir?
afternoon. Hi, Loren. Hi,
Yeah.
everybody. How's everyone doing?
Are you winning, sir? Are you winning? That's all we
Um,
want to know.
yes, actually,
Nice.
I had a good day in court today,
Super.
which is rare, right?
That's all that counts. That's all that counts. Good for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what's going on?
Yeah, it wasn't.
That's not what we're talking about, Joe.
He
Oh yeah.
knows. I know.
No, I continue to really kick myself. Darkside knows my bemoaning this. I'm still upset. I dumped a little too early on my euro position. Otherwise, I've been.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Were
Nailed it.
you really?
Keep going.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah. Okay.
Joe, at least
No.
you're not saying I'm not paying attention.
I am paying attention. I had a lot of fun. I listened to it. This is how much a nerd I am. Twice, Jerome Powell's remarks yesterday, so that was great. That's like the monthly Super Bowl for me, so that was fun. I hope everybody.
Joe, I recently learned that you're an effing a-hole, apparently. I didn't know that. So I learned
Let's
something.
not poke somebody while they're down. I don't want to
I
poke.
know. I know. Yeah,
Um,
my bad.
yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed that yesterday. It was, man, what a
Yeah, don't be mean to Joe while he's down. That's not nice, Lauren.
yes,
I don't know what you're talking
correct.
about, Teddy.
Although Teddy, you'd be proud of me. I'm like 90 days without alcohol right now, which is
Oh, good
great.
job, man.
Yeah, no, I started right at the new year, and I told my wife's due in the next couple weeks here that basically after the holidays that I wasn't going to drink to share
Joe, that
any.
is awesome, man. Do you know if it's a boy or a girl?
We do not. We're keeping this one a surprise. I have a son, and he's 5, and then this one I was saying if I get another boy, that's wonderful, right? But fingers crossed for a girl. Either one are great, right? Two boys or a boy and a girl, both are perfect. Whatever God's plan is, I'm for.
That's awesome. Nothing more important than being dad.
Congrats, man.
Yeah, thank you. But what are we
Indeed.
talking about today? Collapse of the system?
Everything. Burn it all down,
Yeah,
Joe.
we've been
No,
all
we were talking
over. I
about
mean,
Tether. Yeah, we have.
we've talked to
Go
everything
ahead.
from Tether to stagflation's impact on cigarette pricing to no, but it's been a good conversation. I'm kind of just stepping back in now, so I had my meeting
We're
was
solving
done.
the world's problems, Joe.
Joe, one, I think you could take it in this direction of like we were talking about how it's difficult to talk to finance people sometimes, and
Oh,
sometimes
they're the
people,
worst. They're the
yeah,
worst.
people that are high up, right? Like fund managers or like, just very high level, smart, intelligent people. What's your take on that? Like, how do you talk to those folks? Because you come at it from a finance perspective, but you have all the other knowledge that we've been arguing is required for someone to actually get off zero or actually make a big play in Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest challenges for people in Bitcoin in the TradFi world is that they're very much focused on the immediate now. Like we talk about short-term time preference, low time preference versus high time preference. They're very high time preference. They're always thinking this quarter. They're always thinking like, what's the next 2 weeks out in front of me? And the problem I think that they consistently miss is that the way I describe Bitcoin, I don't particularly care for the digital gold narrative or the insurance against the collapse of the system type narrative. I'm a big believer in like I describe it as a call option on a future monetary and financial system. So if you believe, as I believe, that Bitcoin has got a long road ahead of us, it's got a decade-long plan to slowly and steadily, basically replace, succeed is a better word, succeed the current financial order. You have to not only think about today, you have to think about the potentiality of what Bitcoin could be down the line. And people talk about the build out of the internet and these things, and it's really important to have a big imagination. So from my standpoint, what I always approach them as, look, guys, if you can buy as much Apple stock as you want, or Nvidia, or any of these major growth companies, you can buy your 60/40 portfolio. I don't care at all about that. But look at Bitcoin as technology. I always encourage people coming at it first. The first thing you should do, just use Bitcoin. Send an on-chain transaction. Just consider it a loss, not an investment. Just, I don't care if it's 10, 20, 30, $40, whatever it is, if you're a big fund manager, just try to experiment and send it. And that's when it really clicked for me. I held Bitcoin for years before I actually sent an on-chain transaction. When I really did, that's when I got into it. And then when I say, it's like, okay, this technology here, which is not just, it's not currently designed, in my view, for everyday world payments. It's designed to be a base layer financial system tool that can potentially be an alternative to sovereign debt and treasuries. Imagine this has a rate of success. Imagine this succeeds 10, 20, 40 years down the line. If it succeeds, okay, what is the value? And I would submit to you that the value for Bitcoin is, tens of millions of dollars per Bitcoin. Now, you can say it has a 1% chance of succeeding, or it has a 2% chance of succeeding. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it. If your conclusion, fund manager, TradFi person, is that this has a 1 or 2% chance of succeeding, then why isn't it 1% of your portfolio? It just from a basic risk-adjusted return standpoint, it should be 1 or 2% per portfolio if you think it has a chance of being a global base layer monetary technology. And that clicks with a lot of people. Now, it takes a little time. You can't spit that out in an elevator pitch, but that's fine. Good things in life take time, and you can explain and work with people on it. But when you go at them from the standpoint as, the system's a house of cards, it's all going to blow up and fiat's done, and, the gold bug narrative, in my view, I think that turns off a lot of people. They have heard that argument since the 1970s. They're literally some of the same people. I mean, Ron Paul was saying the exact same thing in the 1980s as he's saying today, and go find clips. And they just say, "I'm sorry, I don't believe you. This is not a convincing argument that we're going to be underneath a bridge, eating cat food, clinging to guns, and buying stuff with our Bitcoin." So to me, like that's where you got to meet them at. You got to meet them as this is a future technology, and you're not buying Bitcoin today for what it can do in the future for our monetary system. You're buying it today because it needs to go through a store of value phase to get into the tens of trillions of dollars. So it's deep, global, and liquid, and well adopted enough that it can really serve as an alternative to sovereign debt. So sorry for the long-winded response.
Joe, I only
Oh,
have
that's perfect.
one thing of feedback there. I don't know if you knew this or not, but gold just hit an all-time high. So how do you explain that?
I mean, gold goes through these. No, no, it's a great question. I don't think it's funny at all. I mean, gold goes through these periods, right, where it does really well when commodities.
Joe must have another call.
You
Hey, we're gonna give
answered.
Peter.
Uh-oh.
We'll give Peter Schiff his victory lap on the gold price alone. Sorry, Joe. I think you cut out. You must have had a
I got
call.
a
Go ahead.
call. I
Yeah, go ahead. We can
yeah,
hear you
yeah.
again.
What I was just saying is, I don't particularly care for gold, but it goes through these periods where it goes through, very strong performance and then really crappy performance. It goes on these longer waves, right? Depending on when you bought gold, you could have been underwater your position for literally decades. And by some measure, gold has still not achieved an inflation adjusted all-time high vis-a-vis where it was in the early 80s, late 70s. So to me, I think gold is as an asset. Okay, you can make a case that it should be in your portfolio. I find trouble having it in my portfolio, and I own zero gold. I own a tiny bit of silver just for a weird reason, but I own zero gold for the simple purpose that I think Bitcoin's better technology, and that's it. It's that, and right now over the last several years, basically 5 years, the market has said, and I'm honest about this, the market says, Joe, you're wrong. I mean, Bitcoin has not made a new all-time high in gold terms since 2021. Do I think that's always going to be the case? I do not. I think you need to get through that gold adjusted all-time high of Bitcoin, and once you break through that, man, I think Bitcoin's going to go on a real run.
Totally agree. I think Matt. Matt, you had your hand up, didn't you?
Yeah, Matt and then Pubby.
I
Oh, Pup.
absolutely agree with Joe. I would add this part. Um, you also have to put yourself in the financial advisor's shoes. This is an existential threat to his or her job. Like, why would they ever recommend you? Like, think it through. Okay, great. My client is seriously interested in Bitcoin. They've realized that it outperforms everything else in their portfolio. They've realized that it's probably going to be the best store of value throughout their lifetime, probably into their kids too. So what the hell are they paying me for? Just to recommend them which ETF or cold storage to store their Bitcoin in? Great, I'm fired by Monday. That's what smart financial advisors realize and understand. That's why they tell you all this song and dance about how it's so dangerous and we don't know about what will happen with Satoshi's original coins and Michael Saylor's crazy and all this stuff just to scare you out of the fact that it's has ridiculous outperformance for over 15 years plus. That's it. That's the
Yeah.
whole thing. Sorry, go ahead, Joe. Yes.
No, I completely agree. And the one final piece is complete that, Matt, because you're spot on, is that financial advisors are almost programmed to be risk averse. And they will tell you, I mean, I play cards with one. He has a massive book of business, okay? And he tells me, I never get calls when I return like 4 or 5% a year. I get the calls when there's a downdraft of 10 or 15%. That's when I lose business, right? So they're designed for preservation of capital on a nominal basis. That bold and underline that point. They're designed to keep your account looking the same or maybe slightly better, not even keeping up with inflation. Nobody's fired their FA because he hasn't kept up with inflation. In Bitcoin, we're hypersensitive to like real terms, real adjusted returns. But I would submit to you the majority of people, and we know this from like Daniel Kahneman's work on thinking fast and slow, they're risk averse. The pain from loss is 10 times more pronounced than the how good it feels to win. And in the Bitcoin world, like we're kind of the opposite. We're like we don't mind the short term volatility. We can sit through gut wrenching drawdowns as long as we know that on the other side we're going to get outsized rewards. And you have to train your brain to think about that. And that's true in so many aspects of life. Like you got to get away from the fear of loss because fear of loss puts you in bad positions and causes you to make bad decisions.
Yeah. I mean, you can almost draw a direct correlation between the entities, the big players, the entities that are bullish Bitcoin, and do they have a product to sell you to stay a client? Like
look at BlackRock, Fidelity, Bitwise, Valkyrie, hell, even Kathy Wood's ARK. How come they're all so bullish Bitcoin and say nice things about it and recommend it to their clients? Well, because they have a product within their list of assets for you to buy. You don't even look, you don't even have to move your money out of Fidelity. You don't even have to leave BlackRock or Bitwise. So of course they're happy to tell you all day long about Bitcoin. It's Vanguard, it's JP Morgan, it's all the TradFi entities that don't have a product to sell you and your dollar, your family dollar financial advisor down the street. They don't want to lose you as a client. So they're never going to recommend you Bitcoin because then you're de facto taking money away from them.
Well said. Hey, Pubs, how many beers, sir?
Hey, no beers yet. I'm still out here skiing. Had to come in and get some cider,
Nice.
warm up a bit. I mean, great stage you got going here, and just a reminder. Like we were talking yesterday when we were signing off about what makes you bullish, and I was going back. Before we had Bitcoin couldn't scale, then boom, here comes the Lightning Network, and then we said we need a corporation, and here comes Michael Saylor. We need a country. Here comes El Salvador. Here comes the ETF. Yeah, here comes this. What I'm saying is this: each year there's just something else adding to it, but what we got to remember too is the timing of adoption isn't our timing. I think it's funny that MicroStrategy. What do they have? 2.3% of the total supply right now, and everything you guys are saying, man, how come these other people don't get it? How come they don't get it yet? I don't know. I don't know. And I just caution everyone not to be Debbie Downer is don't be buying Bitcoin because someone, oh, I love Michael Saylor. I'm going to buy Bitcoin. Oh, the president says it's a strategic reserve. No, you buy Bitcoin because guess what? It's for you. You got to do your research, and it's an individual thing. Remember how excited everyone was when Elon Musk bought Bitcoin, only to turn around and sell it? That's the point, man. Be here for yourself and all of this. Enjoy the news, but yeah, you're gonna have to wait on this. The speed isn't what we like, but man, I'll tell you what. Once everyone figures out the self custody thing, yeah, that's where the gradually suddenly comes in. So yeah, thanks for hosting this one. I'm going to go back out and get a few more runs in this afternoon.
Double G.
Hey, I think before Gigi goes here, I believe
No,
when
that's double G.
Double G,
GG is someone else.
GG, Double G, before Double G goes, I think on Darkside's last comments, I heard the sighting, maybe it was the dolphin sighting siren go off, and that's probably what happened with him, and he had to drop down because everybody rushed to the bow of the vessel to watch the dolphins. Anyway, Double G, sir.
Yeah, great talk, guys. I just wanted to unfortunately sign off because I've got a podcast recording actually with Natalie Brunel. She's coming on in 15 minutes. But yeah, I just wanted to wish everybody a fantastic day ahead. Stay being great stack sats, guys. Stay
Yeah, man.
unmuggable.
Check out GG's I mean Double G's stuff. I was scrolling through the list and impressive stack of folks you've been interviewing lately. It's good stuff, man. So I
Thanks.
would suggest everybody check it out. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Loren. I look forward to having you back on Tuesday. And yeah, I just crossed episode 100. So next Thursday, episode 100 is coming out, which is going to be focusing on privacy with Seth for Privacy came back on the show. So yeah, thanks a lot for the shout out. Great speaking to you guys. Great conversation. And I look forward to joining you next time. Take
Thanks
care,
for
guys.
stopping in, Double G. Thank you.
Double
Thanks.
G.
Stay great.
Loren, I need to step out. It looks like Teddy's up. But I'll see everybody. I'll see the gang tomorrow.
Thanks, Terrence. See you
All
tomorrow.
right. Thank you. And thanks, Macro, for running things. Thanks, guys.
I was just going to bring up another topic. I'm not sure if it has been discussed, but I saw a post that was saying Senator Lummis thinks that Biden admin was selling the Bitcoin that they held for the DOJ, and that they might not hold the 200,000 Bitcoin that we suspect them to hold. Do you guys talk about this at all, or anybody have any thoughts on if that's true or not? Apparently, an audit is being done, and we should know the answer within the next few weeks. But it'd be interesting if that was the case, that they had sold some or all, or who knows what, of that Bitcoin, and the price is still at $84,000 or
Yeah,
$83,000.
that's a great topic. We did touch on it, but I'd be curious to hear opinions like Joe, for example. I think TC really nailed it when he said, "Who holds the keys?" So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't really know for sure, right? If they've sold some amount of Bitcoin, I find it hard to believe that they've sold significant amounts of Bitcoin based on some of the court proceedings I'm involved with. I mean, for example, one of the single biggest batches of Bitcoin I know for a fact, because they filed an affidavit with the court that they didn't, is the Silk Road coins, right? So those coins in particular, I know, and that's a huge chunk of the Bitcoin that they hold. Those haven't been sold. So the reality is they're very frequently selling, and they're very frequently acquiring new Bitcoin. They confiscated, I think, something like 600 new Bitcoin in the last 2 weeks here. So it's a moving target. The question is, and I think this is the implication by Senator Lummis, is that they just did like a fire sale, that they dumped a whole bunch of Bitcoin. I don't know where she's getting that information from, but she's a U.S. senator, so at least we should probably at least put some weight on it.
I mean, what this tells me is that they're trying to set up something that it's probably not 200. I mean, the number they kept saying was 200,000. I think Trump said it, and others, Lutnick maybe. My sense is that it's not going to be that. It's going to be something lower than that. I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know if there's validity to Biden selling stuff off or whatever, but my guess is it's going to be lower than 200. But Joe, I agree with you, like not significantly lower. So we'll see. But clearly, I think it's about expectation setting. If Loomis is going to come out and say that, then likely it's less than 200 is my guess.
Well, I've been pretty consistent in my position that criminals steal. And I believe the previous administration was full of criminals. And I suspect a lot of the Bitcoin is stolen. I've been saying that since early
Stolen
November.
or sold? You think it was? You think someone? You think an
Stolen.
agent in the government stole the Bitcoin?
Yes. The same
Based
way
on
they
what?
stole the USAID funds, the same way they stole the the democracy funds. I think it will be stolen, you know, given some form of corruption. But I'm look, we're going to find out, right?
Well,
So
listen. If you stole Bitcoin, if you're a government actor who stole Bitcoin, you're probably one of the dumbest people that has ever existed, because the ability to trace the stolen Bitcoin funds is going to be incredibly easy. Like I do this, tracing Bitcoin with experts and with consultants. The notion that you're going to be able to profit from that Bitcoin and sufficiently mix those coins and move them without it being traced back to you and your identity is, I think, especially if you worked in the government. Anybody who has access to that Bitcoin, they know every single person who touched those private keys. That's going to it'll be the dumbest heist in the world.
that's exactly
Yeah,
what I was
but
going to
we
ask about. Is
yeah,
wouldn't it
but
be
wait a
super
minute.
easy to trace that?
We actually have video footage of people going into Epstein's island.
What
We
does that have
actually
to do with
own
Vietnam? I
because
don't understand.
no one's gotten in trouble. Somehow, if you work in government and you steal or you commit crime, there seems to be zero accountability unless you're a pleb.
I
But
mean, this
anybody,
Who controls the Justice Department? Remind me.
I don't
Who?
know.
Wait,
I have no idea.
you don't think hang on a second. So you think the Trump administration DOJ isn't going to prosecute people where there's clear evidence of criminality?
That's correct.
What?
I think I just believe that until proven otherwise. Look, they're sitting on the films. They went onto the island. We actually have footage of the FBI walking off the island with the videos. Okay, so until somebody goes to jail, right? Like I'm in the camp of, well,
You don't know
if you're
did you
not,
see the videos? You know what's on the videos?
I know. I know that they have convicted. What's her name of trafficking
Who's
I
what's her
mean,
name?
in drones.
Maxwell?
Knoxville.
Yeah. Okay.
But guys, back to the Bitcoin though. Back to the Bitcoin. Like,
So I mean, look, wait a minute. Like, we know that crimes were committed. Somebody's been convicted for those crimes,
Yes, but there has
but
to be
the
evidence. We
people.
live in a system where there has to be evidence, right?
I know, but
And
in other words, no one has released the evidence. Look, it took, well, how many years to get these JFK files, and they're very incomplete. But we know one
how
thing. We
do
know
you
one
know
thing.
they're
They were
incomplete?
lying
How do you know they're incomplete? I mean,
because
like,
what they released was only from 1992, which is about 2/3 of the Epstein files. That's a
Dark,
fact.
Dark, I agree with you that something probably fishy happened with the Bitcoin. Joe, to your response, like all they would have to do is sell it into fiat, and then they can start the whole whatever money laundering shit they want. So
how are they
I
going
don't
to sell
know.
it into fiat? How are they going to sell, billions of dollars into fiat?
Well, I don't know the amounts. We'll see what the amounts
How
are.
are they,
But I'm just
how are they
saying.
How
sell,
about this?
sell a
I'll give you
million?
a way. I'll give
How are you going to sell
a
$1 million
way.
worth of Bitcoin into
They
fiat?
wash
Tell
it
me
through
how
the
you do it.
Ukraine.
There
They
you
send
go.
it to the Ukraine,
Okay, where there's an on-chain record of.
right? Then
There's going to be an on-chain record.
right,
So you're moving. So just to be clear, you're an
some
Asian in
random
the U.S.
Ukrainian. We know
Yeah.
some
Okay.
random Ukrainian ended up with a whole bunch of Bitcoin. Then they
Okay.
went from there to Russia to Abu Dhabi, and now probably, uh, I would just speculate if those Bitcoin were sold, they've now been re KYC'd and sale price them,
Okay.
right?
So
So now
if
what do you
you have
do?
Bitcoin, okay, that moved from government wallets and moved to random Ukrainian, let's use your example. Let's just go through the
Yep.
process here. Okay, I'm an agent of the government and I have Bitcoin. I've moved it out of the wallet that was held at Coinbase because that's the main custodian for the U.S. Marshals. I moved it from Coinbase.
Yeah,
So
but we
there's an
don't know who
on-chain.
moved it. We
There,
have no. We have no idea who would have moved it.
That's false. The agreement with Coinbase requires verification and ID, and it requires them to submit that in real time, executed by three superiors in the Marshal Service Office.
But
So
are all
some
the coins
superior
held by Ukraine?
at the
Are all the coins held by Coinbase?
yes, that's the new primary custodian, and we have some legacy wallets, right? The legacy wallets, I don't know the exact amount, but I know that over 75% of it's all held by the Coinbase,
The
based
coins,
on public
the
documents.
coins that moved last were not moved from the Coinbase custody though. The 10,000 Bitcoin came from the older
The
wallets.
legacy
Yeah,
wallets.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay. So
and
they move from a legacy wallet, okay, and they move to Ukraine, which is your example, okay? Now you got Ukraine has Bitcoin. Explain to me how the dollars or rubles or whatever is coming from Ukraine gets across the US border, because that's going to all run through commercial banking rails, which means there's always going to be a record. So whatever agent in the government had this complicated strategy, they're going to have to be on a lot of lists, okay, if that money's coming back to them.
I mean, we already know though that money gets laundered through multiple channels and gets laundered back to different folks. And we know from Doge that every single dollar is not tracked. In fact, billions and billions and billions of dollars are just lost. Trillions of dollars are unaccounted for. So, I mean, I don't know. This is all speculation, but it could go either way. Joe, yes, there's a lot of ways to track it, but I don't think Darkside's out of line saying that it could have been some corruption. But I think we'll be close to 200. I don't know. We'll see.
love a good Joe and Darkside back and forth. You guys are, definitely not on the same page with most of your ways of thinking, but I lean a little bit more towards Joe's side on this one, even though I do kind of agree that there's mass corruption in the United States government, across the board, and it's hard to say, I do think, like I personally thought when we saw that 10,000 Bitcoin move, and then that thing got pushed through the courts that they had approval to sell up to, I think it was 69,000 Bitcoin, that and price tanked kind of around that same time. A lot of people were speculating then that they were selling, or that they had sold all of it or some of it, and who knows what. But I do think that they've sold some. Do I think it's a material amount? Probably not, but I don't really know either. And as far as them stealing the Bitcoin and going through some extensive, lengths to launder it, I'm not so sure that's happened. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at this point. Like, kind of these more far out conspiracies have kind of ended up being proven more likely true than not true over the years. So it's a story that time will tell, I guess.
I think this is positive for Bitcoin's trajectory. I'm curious about the panel, Joe or Dark or whoever wants to carry this out. But I mean, let's assume that it is less than 200,000, that the U.S. holds less than 200,000 Bitcoin. I believe from what I looked at, China is very close behind. To me, let's just say they announced they only have 170,000 in the U.S. or something. To me, that means like all systems go, strategic Bitcoin reserve. Let's try to reallocate things as quickly as we can. Let's try to get the number back up to 200,000. Let's get ourselves into the first position. Let's create distance from other countries like China. I mean, Donald Trump has said that we want to be number one. We want to be the center. I would think that this would push us to move quickly, to move more assets and to acquire more Bitcoin. Joe, what do you think, or Dark, or whoever?
Well, my view is that this budget neutral way of acquiring Bitcoin is really the key. If the U.S. government, after the and keep in mind they're still doing this study, and if people have forgotten this, that they've commissioned, even though they've openly stated they're put through executive order the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and they're not going to have any intention to sell alongside the stockpile, which they are going to sell. They still want to study the acquisition of more Bitcoin, and the EO says let's study it in a way in which it has a budget neutral effect. So what you're going to get by end of June, is you're going to get a series of recommendations on how to do that. And one of the recommendations may be something as simple as let's dump the crypto stockpile and convert it to Bitcoin. So I think that the timetable, which is really the gist of your question, does this accelerate? The timetable is going to be the same. It's really going to be with the end of June, early July, where we'll get the advisements from the working group. And if you have a talking point behind that as to how much Bitcoin the U.S. government holds, that is going to be helpful, I think, for their purposes to say, like, look, we don't have as much as we even thought we did. Let's potentially try to acquire more in the budget neutral way. And here's an easy way to do it: dump all the altcoins. The interesting thing for me is what effect that will have on the market. If the U.S. government was actively selling altcoins and buying Bitcoin, I think that from a narrative perspective is wildly bullish for Bitcoin. That's where you see that Bitcoin dominance, head towards 80%.
Hey, Luke. Good afternoon to you. Hey, Joe, what about the Anchorage Digital um, custodying Bitcoin from DOJ, aka U.S. Marshal Service?
Well, they hold some, right? But the primary custodian is Coinbase. So what is your question about it?
Well, I just didn't know. Like, it seems all vague to me. It seems like we don't know how much is in either spot, etc. I kind of agree with you. Initially, I think there was some independent actors that stole small amounts of Bitcoin, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But I'm with you. It'd be really difficult to get away with stealing any significant amount. And even the guys that stole little amounts still got busted because, like you said, there's a record of it. So it
Well,
would be extremely difficult, in my estimation, to
let's
pin
just
it.
carve out one thing, okay? When you talk about Bitcoin held by the government, that verbiage is kind of ambiguous because, like, for example, and I say this frequently, there are clients of mine that have Bitcoin that is their property that is currently held by the U.S. government. So, one of the reasons why this is challenging is because the Marshal Service, when they confiscate things, and I use the example, they confiscate, the drug lord's yacht, they confiscate paintings, they confiscate narcotics, they confiscate firearms, they confiscate a whole variety of things, and it's inventoried, earmarked, and they have a system in which, supposedly there's supposed to be checks and balances behind preventing the exact thing you're talking about, somebody just walking off with the confiscated items. I start from there because just because the government holds something does not mean it is the government's property. And there's lawful process. This is why the executive order talks about, finality with respect to whatever assets they have. I mean, you've exhausted all the appeals process, you've exhausted all court orders, there's no restitution to pay. It's just a leftover remainder that the government's holding. So to get accurate real-time accounting for that, particularly when it can change on a daily basis. Literally, there's Bitcoin that's been sold in the last 2 weeks by the U.S. government. It's right on the Marshal's website. There was a forfeiture auction. That is something you need to really have, a lot more, I guess, of a nimble tracking system than what I think even the government has. So that's part of the reason. But the notion that, I think huge swaths of Bitcoin have just disappeared, maybe, but we'll have to see some evidence of that.
So you're basically saying any of the Bitcoin that's possibly caught up in litigation or whatnot is basically just frozen. What portion, in your estimation or just guesstimate, do you think is actually being held? But I guess you basically said who holds it, and TC said who holds the keys holds the cheese. So that's another one. But what percentage do you just guesstimate is kind of wrapped up and frozen where it can't really do anything because it's still in litigation? Is it a large
Oh
percentage?
yeah, I mean the biggest chunk that I'm aware of is the Silk Road coins. Those are everybody keeps saying the government has X amount of coins. The Silk Road coins are not the government. Excuse me, not Silk Road. The Bitfinex coins, the Bitfinex hack coins, are not the government's property. Everybody keeps repeating this like, oh, it's the government's out of that 200,000. Those coins belong to Bitfinex, and the judge already hinted that that's the way this is going to end. So the notion that those coins belong to the U.S. government and they should be in the stockpile is wrong. The guy who always posts random stuff that's almost 100% inaccurate, that Marty Party DJ guy, he said that no, that Bitfinex is giving up these coins. That's completely wrong. They just filed a paper with the court saying the opposite. They want their coins back because they compensated all the victims of the hack years ago. So that's just one example, and there's a lot more.
Yeah. Shout out to Marty Party DJ guy who's a frequent listener. No, I'm totally kidding. I don't think I follow Marty Party. That was a joke, Joe. So bad if I have to explain it. Dark's back up here. The dolphin sightings are over. Luke jumped up here. Hey, Luke, you're probably up here just in time to sign off because we usually try to wrap these things at 11. Before we do, let us go around the room and say our goodbyes. Joe, hey, thanks for coming, man. We really appreciate you when you jump in here. I know you oftentimes take a lot of time from your busy day. I did want to clarify one thing and make sure that everybody here knows I'm totally joking when I was talking about the Joe stuff. I think maybe I crossed the line, but I really love both these guys, Larry Lepard and Joe. I really have a lot of respect for both of you guys. I think you're both brilliant. I think you both have a lot of amazing things to contribute. So there's no animosity between either party there. I'm sad when people call each other names. So that's where I'll end it. I just wanted to make sure I clarified that
I
before.
didn't call anyone a name. Okay, just
No,
for the
no, you
record.
didn't. It was Larry called you names, but it's just we all get upset and whatnot. And I'm no angel. I call people names and flip people off in traffic and do dumb things. So I'm not throwing stones either.
You've
I'm not
called
better
me
than
a name
anybody. So.
before, Joe.
That's
Uh
true.
oh.
I apologize for any names I've called you, Teddy.
I just wanted to put it out there for your HR department and let them know that you're not the best boy, but
Please, I am far from the best boy. But yes, I have many flaws, and I have told Lawrence that I'm happy to discuss either privately or publicly, either one, any and all reasonable differences of opinion. From my standpoint, I'm a little bit offended by the fact that he refuses to talk. Even his statement, he has this. He replied to one of my, oh, we can talk privately. I messaged him and he says, there's nothing to talk about. So, okay, well, if there's nothing to talk about, then don't represent to the public you're willing to talk because that's disingenuous. But I will say the same thing to his face, and I'm happy to talk to him in a professional, collegial way at any point. I strongly disagree with many of his viewpoints, and that's fine. Many people strongly disagree with me. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. So in any event, thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks, Joe. Clearing that up a little bit. Maybe we go to Jesse, and then maybe we'll go to Joe, just so we can let him get back to his litigating or whatever he's doing right now. Jesse.
Yeah, great chat today, guys. Really enjoyed it. Joe, enjoyed the back and forth toward the end there. I don't really have too much else to say today. I think we're just where we were. We're kind of sideways with the price, obviously, but hopefully this room and hopefully every day that folks are in here, you just get more and more conviction around Bitcoin as you learn more about it. And appreciate everybody for listening. Cheers.
Thanks, Jesse. Joe, it's crazy. There's just so much news. We could really have these rooms and just go for hours. But like you brought up when you first came on, the Fed stuff yesterday, and we went off on different tangents before you got here, and we're in Tether and just all sorts of different subjects. But lasting parting words for the folks before we wrap this space from you, sir.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing on the calendar right now is April 2nd. And the Trump administration's response to Powell's presser is perhaps more important than Powell's presser itself. He said, Trump, in no uncertain terms, you should cut now. What does that tell you? That tells you that the administration is well aware and purposely is attempting to slow down growth, that they expect that slowdown to continue for the next several months. And they're telling the Fed chair, you should cut now. Now, Jerome Powell, trying to walk a tightrope, is saying, look, we don't care about the short-term inflationary spikes as they revise up their inflation expectations, and at the same time, we don't care about the attempted growth slowdown. In fact, he said most of the members of the FOMC said they expect growth to slow down. So the real question is going to be this: on April 2nd, when you get the tariffs in place, what are the reciprocal tariffs we're going to get from other countries? Because we know that they're going to do something, right? As long as those are not really bad and we're done after April 2nd, you can get this constant hand wringing and fear and quote unquote uncertainty. You can get it behind us. And if you're looking, as I am, and hoping for a very strong, powerful Bitcoin rally into the middle part of this year, you got to get this tariff crap done. You got to get off the table. We got to be focused on higher Bitcoin prices and having an awesome summer. So, in conclusion, I believe that early April, we're going to either be in a position where we can say definitively that we're going to have an awesome summer or a really rough one if we're just in the beginning of the trade war instead of the end of the trade war.
I like it. Sounds like we've got a couple hands, so maybe it's not quite the top of the hour. Teddy was first.
Yeah,
Teddy.
no, just on the Fed discussion, now that it's kind of been brought up towards the end of the space. Um, Curious your thoughts, Joe, on how Powell said, and Asteroid actually tweeted this out. I don't know if he was going to ask a similar question, but how Powell kind of blamed the tariffs for inflation, even though like trueflation and inflation has been lower than expected and trending down. Was he, and my understanding was that he was blaming the tariffs for future expected inflation spikes. But the way that he kind of said it, it was framing it like he was blaming current inflation, but inflation hasn't really gone up. So just did you read that the same way that
Yeah, you're
it's
100% correct. So what he was responding to, and it may have sounded like current because it was just announced, is the summary of economic projections, which is basically a survey where they go around to the various members of the FOMC and they ask them to give us a forecast on a going forward basis for inflation, and they escalated, they jacked up their end of year inflation forecast in a decent way. And the reason why he's commenting on it, he's saying, look, it's very difficult to model, but we believe there's going to be some short-term prices and increases. And one of the examples he gave was like washing machines and dryers, and he was talking about how that we've seen this previously, and that we expect it to reaccelerate. Now he's not talking, to be clear, he's not talking about a burst of inflation like going back to 6 or 7 or 8% like we saw in 2022. Right, he's talking about it moving back towards 3, which is not in the right direction, right? It should be going down towards 2. But it's all about forward expectations for inflation. And, that's great. You want that to be priced into the market, because if the numbers come in soft, if they stay in line with what trueflation and these other, current indications are telling you, that's going to be wildly bullish, right? Those are those days where we're going to be limit up when inflation comes in a lot lower than expected. The one final thing he did emphasize, though, is that a lot of their forward-looking inflation metrics is survey-based, like they do household basis for what households expect for inflation expectations. He keeps saying that the market-based things, like he brought us specifically five-year swaps, 5-year forwards, that he thinks that those are going to actually, they remain well Well, anchored is the word he uses. And what he's basically saying is that like the market-based indications don't show the inflation, but there's some sentiment survey data that does. So that's where really what they're focused on. And you want them to overestimate and want to come in under expectations with respect to inflation. That's a good thing.
All right, and Asteroid got here just in time to ask a question and say goodbye.
Teddy knew exactly what I was going to talk about.
You got it, huh?
But my only point, well, the thing that I'm trying to figure out is I've been trying to do a little bit of research. Is there even any strong statistically significant evidence that inflation or tariffs really drive inflation? Because
Yes.
I really can't find a ton. Where?
Well, again, when you say drive
'Cause-
inflation, what typically happens is that there is a burst, and this is where he got into again. He reverted back to the transitory language, which is not good word choice. Okay, it's like an
yeah,
F.
you add on a number and then it sticks, right? And that's it. Like washing
Yeah,
machines go from 400 to 500, then that's done.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. So in the key thing is just think about this. They revised up their inflation mandate, but then they actually didn't move on their rate cutting picture. They're still at two cuts. That is telling you what he's basically doing is he's looking past those little bumps of inflation, those little pockets of inflation. He's saying, I think the long-term inflation picture is fine. I think monetary policy is fine where it's at. We're not in a hurry to cut, but they at the same time they told you that Fed funds by the end of next year is going to be below 3.5. I think he said 3.2 is where they think it's going to be by the end of next year. So they're pricing in two cuts. So they're telling you that they still are easing, but they're just going to be a little bit slower. And then he says, look, he said repeatedly, it's very difficult with the current administration to model. He said nobody has a lot of confidence in their forecasts. He said that repeatedly, including the Fed, and they're willing to move. So one of two things will happen. If growth really slows down, you could probably expect to cut, more aggressively than 50 bips. But then you got to see growth slow down, but that's not bullish for assets. So the best scenario is the following: it is growth remains stable where it is, and inflation remains stable. That's where we get our Bitcoin bull market to 200K.
Did you think it was interesting that he was talking about survey data, kept talking about soft data, and then he was like, people will say that we're going to go into a recession or something, and then they'll go buy a new car the next day or something.
Yeah,
So
no,
like I feel
so
like a lot of the survey data is just fucking noise.
it's horrible. It's horrible data, and a lot of it's driven by politicals. Right? So like if you look at some of the crosstabs, if you're a Republican versus Democrat in terms of business optimism, it's like different worlds. The Democratic business optimism's in the toilet, whereas the Republican numbers are still relatively high. So yeah, the survey data is not good, and you got to throw out that stuff. I mean, this is the thing. You have to look at some of these indicators and say, is there noise in the data for some reason or another? And the problem is a lot of the economists just they get these models and they'll look at it. For example, the yield curve, right? Nobody's talking about the yield curve was absolutely wrong. It was totally wrong. For years, going back to 2022 when it inverted, it's been completely wrong. Growth has remained solid. And why was it wrong? Because of Yellen's games not issuing long-term paper and issuing short-term debt. That skews the yield curve, basic supply and demand. If you don't issue long-term paper, without a supply catalyst, how are long-dated bonds going to rise? And you look at this and explain this to the economists, and they don't even think it through. They just say, oh, the yield curve has always predicted every recession. And this is the problem. I mean, you have to look at what is driving the actual data in your indicators.
That's a brilliant point, Joe. Really brilliant. That needs to be driven home more. Dark, are you still around, buddy? Are you just enjoying
No,
that
I
break?
am. I am sitting on my
Sweet.
balcony. Yeah, no,
Awesome.
all
So jealous.
no. Look, I
Wish
think
your dad a happy birthday for
I
us.
will do.
Hey, do you want to
Yeah, I just
leave the
want to.
folks with some words? Sure, please
Yeah,
do.
I'll just chime in on what Joe just said, right? Which is that these economists have no fucking clue what's going on, right? And I think that kind of, in my humble opinion, that includes the Federal Reserve and all of the different components of their surveys and everything else they do. I don't think anybody's got a clue. I would argue, against the bump of inflation. Well, if we get, relief on drill, baby, drill, then you'll see oil prices come down. And oil prices, are far more impactful on the economy than washers and dryers, or any electronics for that
I'll,
matter.
I'll, I'll give you one better, Dark. What if the 10-year falls? What if 10-year falls quite a bit? What do you think
Yeah,
that's going to do to real estate?
right,
I mean,
exactly. So,
so
and by the way,
Core
that may
financing.
not, the point, Joe, there, is that it's debatable whether real estate will go up if interest rates drop. right?
It
Only,
won't go up.
yeah, I would argue that
Supply is going to flood the market. I know piles of
that's
people who
right.
want to move are waiting for a low rate. They're waiting.
That's right.
We'll
Like
release
I
tons of
think
supply.
I think they should be cutting aggressively. Now, that being said, the one thing we haven't talked about is the reason why I believe they're not cutting, and the reason why I believe they're really hesitant to cut is because the yen carry trade, right? Like that thing could come unwound if we start cutting and Japan continues to raise, right? Like you could see the yen down at 130, and then now we have all kinds of catastrophic effects to the shadow banking system. So the problem is that the Fed, they're in a box. Pretty much no matter what they do, other than just do nothing, causes a problem, right? And it's not as easy. I understand why Trump would say, well, lower interest rates. But again, that sets off a whole nother cascading series of problems. So I just think we're really stuck in a box. And this is where Joe and I would disagree. I think this is what it looks like when you kick the can down the road for 20 years and you begin to run out of road. That's when you really can't do anything anymore. There's no levers you can pull
What's
to
the
fix.
box, Loren? What's the problem?
Well, the box is we should be lowering interest rates to ease the housing market and to create supply to bring houses on the market because people are trapped in low interest rate mortgages. But if we lower interest rates, we're going to crash. We're going to crash the yen carry trade and the entire shadow banking system of the globe. So we're really like we can't raise interest rates, obviously, right? Like what can we do? What levers are left?
Tons of levers.
There are
Here,
levers.
here,
Yeah, right. And I know Joe will say there's tons of levers. I agree with him. There's tons of levers, but none of them lead to a
well,
really good
if there's tons of levers, then how are we in a
because
box?
I don't think those levers lead to good outcomes. Right? Like there's levers you can pull, but for every lever you pull, you sort of ignite another problem. And I think
Yeah,
that
but that's
look,
true of every solution.
yeah,
Anything you do
well,
in life has a
no, look,
cost.
if
If I
to some degree, you and I are going to end in the same place, which is that this is why Bitcoin is so fantastic as a base monetary asset, right? Because it eases a lot of these pains. It gives you a lot more levers. If our balance sheet was in much better shape, we would have all kinds of levers we could pull, but we don't today, right? Like, ultimately, we need to borrow, we need to refinance and borrow at lower rates, but that's very hard to do in the current atmosphere where globally we've exported so much inflation that those economies, Japan as an example, they're raising rates, right? So it's just like no matter where we go, it seems to me wherever we turn, all roads lead back to we need a better base layer of money, and that's the one thing you and I agree on, right? Completely, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but okay, let's just look at the options. Okay, number one, you have an option right now that's being the main preferred strategy of the Trump administration, which is guess what? We've been the police of the world, we've secured the world, and now you all are going to pay for it through tariffs.
Yep.
That's the stated objective of the Trump administration. So the idea is that listen, we're the only world's true superpower right now. Our military might is roughly unmatched, and because of that, we can require you to pay effectively a security budget. I mean, that's what has driven a lot of the deficit and a lot of the debt over the last 30 years. American
Absolutely.
adventurism and so the notion that like, oh, we have no cards to play. I mean, if you're at the poker table and you get to beat any country in the world, you wouldn't even think twice. You'd be like, we're the
Oh,
United
for
States.
sure.
They have the most levers to
Absolutely.
pull. So
Absolutely. I would just argue that in this case, we're sort of the world's tallest midget, right? Like
the
we
world's tallest
We
midget
absolutely
is a
say we say
badass.
little person.
The world's
We say
tallest
little
midget would,
person. You know.
yeah. The world's tallest. I'm sorry. Apologies, HR department. The world's tallest little person would be a giant, right? That's the whole point. Like it's all a
well,
relative sum game.
I'm offended. My cat is a midget.
I'm just saying. I mean, if you're the tallest little person on the playground, you're a big dude. That's the whole point.
Chicken, they're talking shit about you. He's a midget cat. Come on.
no,
Hey,
no, and Joe, to that
hey,
point, you and I
hey,
agree.
Asteroid.
I fear that things might not go as smooth. Like we sort of are in a position where we need things to go smoothly, right? Like we need a couple of years of things going smoothly. We need to increase growth. We need to improve the balance sheet. And I don't know why. Look, I want things
Be
to work
optimistic,
out.
Dark. We'll figure this
I
out,
s-
man.
No,
We're
I
gonna
am.
figure this out.
Look, I'm optimistic.
I suggest you think of all the things that could go right instead of all the things that could go
No,
wrong.
I
Dark
do.
side.
Look, again, I'm 90% positive. I
Your
just think
name is
that
You
this,
sound
Dark
a little more
Side.
happy that you're in Tampa or whatever.
I just believe
I'll be
there's
honest.
that.
Are you in Tampa?
No, I'm in Miami about to leave on a boat.
You got to move to Miami. You seem way more laid back.
But I just argue that the kind of the black swan potential is pretty high, right? Like things can go wrong in the Ukraine, and I mean I want peace more than anything, but I'm very skeptical, right? Like this feels like I don't know.
It's
You know,
gonna
Get
be
again,
that
great. The
macro
summer's
account going.
coming. We're gonna have a great year. It's gonna be. You don't even know how good this year is gonna
Me
be.
too. Shit's
You
gonna
you
boom, man. Everything's gonna be
you,
fucking great.
yeah,
Be
you don't know
positive.
how. I think this is the problem. People haven't been outside enough. We're tired of winter, so people are cranky. You need to get more optimistic. Everything's gonna be great. It's gonna be a
You can
great
hear
year.
Darkside. He sounds more optimistic being in Miami. You got to get a
you
Miami
know,
condo, Darkside.
I'm very
I can hear the happiness in your voice.
I'm very optimistic. I'm concerned about black swans coming out of Europe. I really am. I'm less or so out of China, but more so out of Europe. I just have this bad feeling that things are really bad over there. And look, when we have Europeans up on these spaces, they tell you things have never been worse. So like while yeah, things are great here in America, at least for a large percentage of us, Europe's really struggling.
Germany's gonna spend $500 billion. Okay, they're pumping out stimulus like they're hotcakes. So I don't see it. I just don't.
I
They
hope you're
can.
right. I hope you're right, brother. I really do.
I would
I
like
want.
to take this opportunity to apologize to Asteroid for booting him off the stage, but I thought if we were ever going to wrap this space up, we would have to boot Asteroid. Macro came on just in time to say goodbye as well. Dark, I didn't mean to cut you off, sir. We're gonna let Macro close, but I wanted to give Teddy the invite to say his parting words. But Dark, are you finished, sir? By the way, I didn't want to cut you off there.
I'm
I just wanted
finished.
to
I'm
say that.
finished. I just want to add, like, I'm with Joe. I want things to work out. I love this
Yeah,
country,
yeah,
and I really hope everything goes smoothly and we're able to get ourselves into a really strong economic position and grow ourselves out of a bad balance sheet. So, yeah, on that, Joe and I
yeah.
100% agree.
Agreed, man. Yeah, no, I totally, for sure. I think Macro was speaking about similar things, but he was using the threading a needle analogy and then speaking about like, hey, once you thread this one, it looks like there may be another needle to thread over here. So like that analogy as well. But we'll give it to Teddy, sir. I can't hear you. Teddy, are you speaking? Because we cannot hear you. Can anybody else hear Teddy?
Nope.
We may we may skip Teddy. Teddy, just we'll recycle you so you can we'll go to Macro. Macro, you came, you probably had a work call or something, I'm assuming. Floor is yours, sir. Come on in and parting words.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. Had a customer emergency I had to handle, so I'm back now. But no, it was a good space today. Really enjoyed the combination of plenty of serious talk with a little bit of fun on the Maxi Madness stuff. So I'll probably be missing tomorrow, but try to hop on the weekend if anybody throws a space up. So I don't really have any thoughts right now. Just thanks again. Always enjoy these and looking forward to more.
Yeah, feel the same way, man. Sorry, Asteroid, once again. I was really trying to wind her down by the top of the hour, which was 15 minutes ago. But you guys were just going back and forth, and it was we were getting some good nuggets out of there. So I'm with you guys. I want to try to remain positive in my life in general, and when I focus on negative things, it just seems like I get more negativity in my life. So I'm trying super hard to stay positive. I really hope this whole thing rolls out in a way that you guys are talking where it's like peaceful and we're not like Joe said under an underpass somewhere with a shotgun and a bag of cat food. That would really suck. So in the meantime, enjoy your lives. Love your families. Good for you, Joe, having another baby. That's awesome.
Hey,
Love
real
those people.
real quick,
Yeah,
Lauren.
yeah. Jump in.
Breaking news.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
SEC just put out guidance that proof of work mining activities, either solo or in a pool, are not something undertaken with a reasonable expectation of profit, therefore not investment contracts. So
Oh
it's in
wow.
the nest for your
Ooh.
guidance.
Oh,
Hey,
nice. Thanks.
hey, Joe, what does that mean? Does that mean not taxable?
No, it means they're not a security. under
Not
housing.
security. Got it. Okay, thanks, brother. And congratulations, Joe. I missed that, but that's awesome news. That's the
Thank you.
best news of the day, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Everybody keep your fingers crossed for a girl. That would be awesome. I'm looking forward to one.
Super. So anyway, with that, we don't Bitcoin isn't a cult, and we have tons of different opinions. Just appreciate everybody, love one another.
It's a
I
cult of different opinions, Lauren.
That's well said. Yeah. So I look forward to meeting a lot of you guys in Vegas in May. So starting some chatter on the side about potential things to do and whatnot and places to meet up. So that'll be fun. Anyway, go live your lives, touch the grass, stack sats, stay humble. Till tomorrow. Have a good one, you guys.